Hello, how's it going, everyone? Hope you're doing well. I had a pretty alright day. Fortunately though, after last night's stream, I basically got no sleep, so tonight will definitely be a shorter one. And yeah. Ooh, sorry to hear that, Aubrey. Hope that gets better for you. Also, my car place is not getting back to me, so I had to extend the rental car that I got until Friday, so we'll see what that means for streams, but I might have to cancel my one appointment. We'll have to find out. But so yeah, we're continuing with Peak today. I'll let you guys know the rest of the week's schedule. Small chance that we move tomorrow's stream, but I have no idea, so we'll figure that out as we go along, as we do. I think that's when my next doctor's appointment is as well. Alright, so last time we had a Gigabanger session, where the two stars, were running through an amusement park together, clueless. And then, Alice was supposed, or what is the female MC's name? I forgot their names. Female MC was supposed to kill male MC. Alco, yeah. And she didn't, and now Alice shows up to do it. So here we go. Night of the Witches 2. This is like chapter 3 or something. Chapter 2, I don't remember. Oh, chapter 5. The melody stirred an emotion like nostalgia within them. Something once familiar but now lost in this world. They believed beyond a shadow of a doubt that it would play for all eternity. From opening stanza to final coda was a mysterious siren song, merry yet longing, that heralded a return from dreams to reality. Why is there a cat? Let me know if it's too quiet or not. It looks a little quiet on your guys' end, but I'm not too sure compared to me. The night shook. A song was spun. It's fun, okay. Now their lost paradise was unearthed. Abandoned dreams, forsaken idols. They all responded to the cry of the blue cat? The name of that bell was Diddle Diddle Banquet of the Night. All fables made possible, all marvels made real, by the magecraft of Alice Guanji, more magical than magic itself. She a magical girl? Yo, how's it going, Bear? I stalled long enough to see if he would show up. But he did not.
それはあなた一人で決めていいことだったかしら。
Alice sat perched atop the clock tower like a black bird of ill omen. I prefer bluebirds. She smoothed the ruffles of her skirt as if she were preening.
Alice.
There was tension in Alco's voice as she lifted her head. The calm atmosphere from a moment prior had long since been shooed away by Alice's gaze.
あの子、確か
Sojiro searched his hazy memory. He could not clearly make out her face at this distance, but he was sure he had seen her around town a number of times. where and when eluded him, however, as the tension in the air kept him from connecting all the dots.
驚いた。随分と仲間思いになったのね、アリス。今夜は私に任せるんじゃなかったっけ？
Aoko readied her guard and took half a step forward, unconsciously. From an objective standpoint, it almost looked as though she were protecting the figure beside her. Alice's silence grew even heavier. Her eyes, fixed on the ground below her, were devoid of emotion. Does she ever show emotion? An indescribable sense of dread and pressure laid claim over the plaza.
かね
This looks so cool. She's like legitimately aura farming. If he strained his ears, he could make out the faint ringing of a bell echoing in the distance. The rippling sound waves seemed unbelievably to be emanating from under the
なあ青
ground.
崎あの子
黙ってて。
Sojiro stepped back, trying to stay out of the way. It was as though he had been told to go to hell. The crime of asking if the girl was Aoko's friend.
そうね。仲間思いに当てはまるかは微妙だけど、良くない予感がしたから様子を見に来ただけ。別にあなたの仕事を疑ったわけじゃないわ。それはどうも。どうせならもう少し早くその良くない予感とやらに気づいてほしかったけど。
Yeah, she might have saved us a lot of trouble here.
でもま、ご覧の通り自己解決したわ。夜も遅いし、さっさと帰っていいわよ、アリス。私の仕事っぷりを疑うわけじゃないんでしょ？
Monka W. Their eyes locked on one another. Alice's stare was uncomfortably cold. Aoko's was bold, daring Alice to air her complaints.
いえ、気が変わったわ。せっかくだし二人で帰りましょう。その方があなたらしいわ。帰りしな、人形の話でも聞かせてちょうだい。はっ、らしいって何よ、らしいって。いいから帰れ帰れ、ぐうたらアリス。部屋に閉じこもって役に立たないムクドリでも作ってろっての。
What are you typing, Bear? What the fuck? A disappointed sigh escaped Alice's delicate lips. It seemed that the black-clad girl was more astonished than angry.
青子、口にしたくないけど。
Quietly, Alice questioned her roommate of nearly 2 years.
呆れた。二人で秘密を守ると言ったのに。まだ半端にそっち側なの？それとも情でも移った？
Bro, how about you cast some auras from Strixhaven? Bro, Bear is always on one.
別に情っていうより私の気分。だいたい方針なんてその場その場で変わるもんでしょ。気分ならなおさらよ。そっちこそ一度した約束は絶対守るなんて時代遅れなんじゃない？
The proverbial knives were out now. No quarter was given nor taken. Sadly, their partnership was one of convenience and had not reached the level of mutual understanding. Their version of friendship was both delicate and unique. When a conflict of opinion arose, each would refuse to budge until the other crumbled. Neither was concerned for the other's plight, and at least for now, that was how they liked it.
そうね。今の暴言はあなたらしいとは思うけど。
Once again, she let out a sigh even larger than the one before.
言い争いは後にしましょう。そこの彼をいなかったことにするのは
Uh-oh.
私だけで十分だし。
Finally, she struck straight to the point. Bro, it's January. As if making to move a chess piece, Alice lifted her slender finger. Oh my god, she summoned a fork. Wait, she actually summoned a fork. What the fuck? Even this simple action seemed mysterious to Sojiro, the same boy who had been hunted by his classmate Aoko Aozaki and borne witness to an automaton. Aoko's violence and an animated doll. Though perhaps far beyond the realm of logic, both these things were derived from reality. As surprised as he had been, there was no need to think of them as total mysteries. However, when the thing appeared out of thin air from a seemingly unrelated gesture, he had no word for it beyond or besides mysterious. Sojiro stood motionless, captivated by this stage performer's magic trick as the girl's single-finger magecraft turned into an attack directed at him. A blue light flew from the side to repel it, annihilating it without a trace. Oh my gosh, she protected him. Aoko immediately regretted her reflexive shot.
どういうこと？約束を曲げただけじゃなく、ルールまで破るつもり？
What rules did she break? I swear, every time I take a bite or a sip, they stop talking. The already chilled midwinter air plunged below freezing. Alice looked calm and collected on the outside, but in reality she was sometimes even more hot-blooded than Aoko. This was especially true when it concerned her familiars. Accidentally breaking one would often result in a week of silent treatment. But against someone who maliciously destroyed her things, Alice was prone to retaliate without warning.
あっちゃー、いつかやるとは思ったけど、ついに逆鱗に触れちゃったか。
Aoko sighed herself. Even she was exasperated by her own stupidity, yet she couldn't help but feel a pang of relief. She did not intend to make any excuses, and she had no regrets. If she had broken the rules, then so had Alice.
青子。
なんていうか。
If anything, this took a load off her mind. After all, now there was no going back. Aoko never intended to break her own rules. If there was anything for Aoko to regret, it was putting too little power into her
私的
shot.
に今夜こいつに死なれるのは困るのよ。なんで日を改めて殺しに来てくれないアリス。いいでしょ？たった1日ぐらい。
To Aoko, it was simply natural to take on a pro bono case in defense of an innocent suspect.
それは市場？
悪い？一宿一般の恩義って割と大事にしてるの、私。
私との協定より。
ええ、時と場合によっては。
Sojiro's human rights had not yet entered the argument. The girls were busy pouring oil on each other's flames. The girl clad in black was the first to move, or rather to erupt.
そう。よくわかったわ、青子。私は彼をここで殺す。あなたは彼をここだけ生かす。つまり私と戦うということでいい？
そんなのいいわけないじゃない。
Aoko bit back the retort. She was very familiar with Alice's magecraft, and knew painfully well how many mystics were hidden in Alice's tiny body. The odds of victory were essentially non-existent, and once the first shot had been fired, Alice Kuonji was without mercy, whether facing a roommate or a friend, a most beloved family member or a stranger. Once Alice began to fight as a witch, she became a heartless, unflappable monster. Aoko advanced another half step forward as if to encourage herself. It was too late to back down now. The situation was no longer a trivial quarrel over a witness. The bedrock of their so-called friendship had nothing to do with their individual abilities and everything to do with their being equals in will. That is why, in order to stay true to herself, Aoko had no room for compromise or deception.
もちろんあんたを殺すことになってもそこのバカは生かしきるわ。
What?
それに
I did not expect that. Her magic circuits howled as they kicked into gear. Her body, which had been mostly dormant during the battle with the puppet, ignited, preparing to demonstrate its true worth.
それにどの道最後には殺し合う仲でしょ私たち。
Her courage overpowered any fear she had for her opponent. Turning her body, her magical circuits to become like the barrel of a gun, Aoko fired a magical bullet. It was an exceedingly basic magecraft formula. There is no nature interference, no creating of wind, parting of water, nor hastening of decay. It was simply the process of converting the imaginary activity known as magical energy into something real before releasing it as heat. She has an ammo system in FGO, right? I guess this is why. Thus, Aoko's destructive power was equal to her supply of magical energy. The magic bullets she had used against Sojiro were among the most basic single-action magecraft. Did not require an incantation. At her present ability, Aoko's main mode of attack, her magic bullet, could be fired at 3 levels of power. These were at the 2nd level. This required a double-action magecraft, a casting through activation of her crest combined with a simplified incantation. I don't hear an incantation. However, without blinking, Alice dispersed the shot that Aoko had mustered all of her spirit to fire. Aoko tutted in frustration. No way, King Tut reference. A swift sneak attack that used a simplified incantation would not be enough to break Alice's guard.
相変わらずお堅いこと。そのから一段と独りよがりになってるんじゃない？
Aoko provoked Alice in order to disguise her own lack of composure. Somehow, Alice seemed delighted by Aoko's
売り言
bravado.
葉に買い言葉というやつね。
Wait, there's no way Seth and Alec show up at the same time. That's mighty suspicious, boys. Yo, goodbye, Bear. Rest in peace.
こういう勢いだけのきっかけは初めてだけど驚いたわ。こんなくだらない理由でもその気になるものなのね、人間って。
Bro, you're fucking on one today. Alice giggled. Smiling with heartfelt amazement, Alice gestured her left hand toward the earth. Oh my god, is she white-eared? Brother, why does she attack with utensils? Countless utensils shot out from underneath the cobblestones paving the plaza. What is going on?
後ろに飛んで。
She grabbed his hand as she shouted, jumping backward before he even had a chance to respond. Shut up, unlimited unlimited country. Oh my god. It's where he got the idea from. As if they had wills for their own, the utensils that had suddenly appeared from the ground gave chase. As the barrier of spears grew around them, Aoko and Sojiro put some distance between themselves and the clock tower.
これで終わり？
Just under 30 feet stood between them and Alice. The lethal weapons that had crumbled stone beneath them fell short of what Aoko had anticipated. They now encircled the clock tower, making the scene look like a burning of a witch at the stake. Oh my god, witch on the holy night? True.
普通逆じゃない？ここは私たちを逃がさないよう槍で周りを囲むものでしょ。
The path behind them was safe. If they wanted, they could try to make a break for the main gate and escape.
いいのアリス。悪いけど。
What is his
逃げられるなら
mouth? Why
逃げる
does it
わ
look like a butthole?
私。
If she could just make it back to town, it would be Aoko's win. All she wanted to do was let Sojiro get away for the night. So if she could get back to the city, it would be, for the most part, mission accomplished. Oh my god, she's got a mutagen token. Chills.
Huh?
Or so she had thought. Without even offering a glance at her targets below, Alice carefully and lovingly, okay, pulled out a bottle from her pocket.
緑のフラスコあれって確かやばとにかくファイヤ
Wait. That's the FGO sound. When you summon? That was the summon sound. Like when Mash's shield, you guys heard that? Like when the spell goes across the shield on the summon screen? That's crazy. I wonder if they ripped all the sound effects from FGO and added them here, or if they were originally from here. Her shot was deflected with ease. Gone was Aoko's earlier bravado. Yeah, but this is a remaster, right? So, like, I don't know that this is what it originally sounded like. It was only natural. Aoko had indeed grown as a mage. Over the last 2 years of study, her studies had progressed well. It's just a voiceover? Wait, all the drawings are the same? Wait, when did this come out? Oh wait, this is newer than I thought it was, right? This came out in like 2010 or something. And she'd more or less gotten a grasp of her roommate's tendencies and abilities. Oh my god, she's got a Sharingan! What the fuck, boys? Wait, how do I remember how to do the thing? Oh, there we go. Oh my god, look at that. It actually looks like she has a Sharingan. That's crazy. This had made her conceited enough to believe that under favorable circumstances she'd be able to show Alice a thing or two in a fight. Alice uncorked the magical bottle. A gentle breeze caressed her cheek. Diddle Diddle fled as a new player stepped onto the stage. But from where would it enter? The sound of footsteps and nostalgic parade approached. Is she summoning a servant? Wait, what the fuck? That sound effect's also an FGO. That's the same sound effect as when a particle thing goes in the fucking story. What emerged was a miracle that Aoko, Aozaki, an apprentice mage had never witnessed. Is Alice not also an apprentice? The dead came to life. Was she a necromancer? The inanimate awakened. The woods were enveloped by the mists. Fire-breathing lizards lurked in the swamps. Puppets made merry at midnight. Alice's slender fingers had transfigured the entirety of the park as if gently stroking the back of an elderly cat. Chills. For one night, the wasteland of dashed hopes and dreams was restored to its former glory. It was an immortal monster ready to devour reality. Oh my god, she's got a, Renegon. A dark fairy tale that once unleashed would never let its prey escape.
この夜を越えることができたのなら、あなたの勝ちにしてあげる。
Her declaration marked the start of a desperate battle. The witch in black laughed at her friend. Her musical mirth filled with affection, sadness, and innocent delight. Saving. Faded glory returned to Kitsy Land. The neon glow of innumerable lights illuminated the night. Speakers filled the air with the sound of vinyl music. Merry-go-rounds, small and large, whirled around and round. All in all, it made for a mind-bending spectacle. It was certainly possible to power the facilities by transmuting magical energy into electricity via alchemy. That said, simply supplying the park with electricity would not have brought back to life that which was broken. The young woman did this not by mixing chemicals into a compound, but by melting down divine providence into a witch's brew.
まずいわね。アリスのプロイは何個か見てきたけど、今回のは桁が違う。セット。
Oh my god, set. Stifling her anxiety, Alco fired up the crest on her right arm. If magic circuits were a mage's engine, then the crest was software that assisted their magecraft, so CPU. For the fledgling mage Alco, this was her trump card. All she had to do was supply magical energy to a crest-based formula. It may not have been the strongest magecraft, but it was hers, proof that she was the successor of the Aozaki lineage.
講師2層直流数門
The pattern of her crest shifted to execute the formula, which then connected to her magical circuits. The process resembled trains changing rails, a puzzle involving dozens of circuits. He constructed it as swiftly as possibly without sacrificing the quality of its construction. Instant magecraft cast without an incantation would not be enough to reach Alice Kuonji. Alco had gauged the strength of Alice's defense with her initial shots. She would dial up the power 5 times with the next time, driving 20 tons of force into her target. Alice had the protection of the thick, hanging fog and the dense barrier around her. However, this attack would be more than enough to pierce through both. If Alco struck home, it could cave in Alice's chest and end the fight. At worst, it would at least knock Alice down from her position atop the clock tower.
そろそろいいかな。
Bro, just shut up, dude. Don't you see you have no... You have no weight here, brother. As always, there was one guy who spoiled the deadly tension, pulling Alco out of her killer mode. Sojiro had been looking back and forth between Alco and Alice in
それ
confusion.
でどういう話になったんだ？
He said it like he might ask for directions to the train station. Normally, she would have lashed out in response, but his deadly serious tone shocked rather than angered her.
信じられない慣れてきた私
Alco swallowed back a sigh and returned her focus, activating her crest.
交渉は決裂ちょっと怒らせすぎたあの子から見ればまあいい機会だし遊園地ごと私を亡き者にしようって腹ね
Sojiro tilted his head as if begging for a simpler explanation.
私割とあの子に恨まれてるから捕まったが最後どんな風に殺されるか想像すらできないわ要するにあんたも私もあの子をどうにかしないと生きて帰れないってことよ
そんなとばっちりだ。
Brother, you're gonna die. Yo, congrats on the 100 streak, Alan. Somebody posted in Keijo's chat that they reached 100 streak tonight, and he was like, yo, hell yeah, good job. And then Connor was like, yo, don't do that. People are gonna start spamming it now. And so a bunch of people got really mad. They were like, I'm at 104. Well, I'm at 116. Why are you only at 100? I was like, we just hit 100 again when people would be at like nearly 200, so we'd be at like 250 or something, I think. No, wait. We hit 200. We'd probably be in the 300s.
まあそういうことになるかもね。
As Sojiro protested in a tone wholly inappropriate to the situation, Aoko let another blast rip from her right arm. She was not aiming at Sojiro, though. A little earlier in the day, and Aoko would have been happy to do exactly that. But now her attention was focused on the girl in black atop the clock tower. Shoot, go! Alright, what the fuck, bro? This is like so OP. This is like fucking... This is like Hinata versus Pain level of disgrace. What is happening? Aoko's mind struggled to catch up to her astonishment. She had fired the strongest, fastest magical bullet she had the ability to conjure, and Alice blocked it. That much was to be expected. When Alice set her mind to defending herself, such an attack was child's play. But what just happened? Something Aoko had never seen before leapt to Alice's defense. A team of horses? A plague of locusts? No, those existed in the real world, unlike what Aoko had just witnessed. Normal creatures could not form like a spontaneous cloud of fog and then dissipate just as quickly into the night sky. Oh, hell no, bro. Impossible things moved in impossible ways. Alice was not even supplying them with any power source. Those things never needed power in the first place. Those broken and discarded things did not follow the rules of mankind. This was an invasion of fairy tales. Compared to them, the automaton looked merciful. Okay, that horse thing is fucking terrifying, by the way. Autonomous puppets were products of magecraft, but even then they behaved as puppets should. These newly animated things, however, were nothing of the sort. Empty vessels became living creatures, dummies warped into malformed beings. There was a fog so dense with magical energy, it visibly spread to all corners of the park, bringing with it a monstrous welcoming party that easily numbered over 1,000. Spurred on by the shuddering sensation running down her spine, Aoko fired a barrage of single-action magic bullets. Her impulsive attack scattered futilely. Oh, we're so fucked. We've never been so not back. The knights of the merry-go-round soared into the sky. Green, fire-breathing lizards flocked. The bakeries opened their doors once again, and the human-sized loaves of fresh bread marched from their human-sized loaves of fresh bread marched from their ovens as platoons of newly baked soldiers.
Aozaki, uchiro!
Oh my god, what are these little things? Aoki and Sojiro were completely surrounded. The Ferris wheel creaked as it gently turned. A rickety train car raced about the roller coaster tracks with Kitsy, tears streaming down its face aboard. It was a grossly twisted fantasy. The girl in black reigned over the insanity-fueled park. Oh, now we're screwed. Aoko was transfixed by the scene unfolding around her. Then she realized what was happening.
そうだ、これは。
She in a genjutsu? Alice had once told her of Mindster's familiars. Among them were 3 of particular notoriety, one of which she recalled being capable of something similar to this. And it was called...
プロイキッシャ、フラットスナーク。
Yeah, I don't know what that is.
青崎、だから後ろ。
Struck by Aoko's bullets, the creatures exploded into splinters. It was clear Aoko's shots were becoming more powerful. It was also the case that these beings were less robust than your average automata. Aoko turned away from the clock tower, grabbed his hand, and began to run.
青崎。
ごめん、これ無理。逃げるわよ。
逃げるってどこに？
Bro, anywhere.
どこって、とにかく行けるところまで。
That's what I'm saying. She shouted as though trying to persuade herself as she valiantly cleared a path. Ako's magic bullets flew like a scream. Blowing away the creatures that blocked or simply gathered around their path, she made a hole for them to escape through.
Pew pew pew.
Magical bullets exploded like blue fireworks. Aoko and Sojiro ran down the bumpy brick road. Their bond forged in the heat of battle went far beyond mutual convenience. They headed for the park's exit at full speed without exchanging a word or a look. The weirdness only extended as far as the park border. They would be safe as long as they made it outside. Oh my god, it's more bread familiars. But, speaking in pure numbers, the difference in strength was 2 versus an army. Or rather, 1 versus an army. Sojiro was hardly useful in the situation, and manpower wasn't really the issue here, since they were facing puppets.
さっきの大丈夫？上からこうでっかいハサミが落ちてきたけど。
Ako shouted as she blasted away the monsters that stood in their path. There is no time to stop for breath or even to look back.
なんとかギリギリ。
As Sojiro pursued, his voice too had naturally become shrill. 5 minutes earlier, they had broken out of the siege at the plaza surprisingly fast. It seemed that the residents' awakening differed case by case, with larger creatures taking additional time.
ラッキー、朝に弱いタイプばっかと見た。
Aoko joked as she mowed down the small fry that popped up. But then, without warning, something outrageous extended its way down from above them. It was the claws of the 60-foot lobster adorning the roof of a seafood restaurant. Okay, man. Its pincers were like a guillotine. As Aoko and Sojiro cut across the front of the restaurant, the Red King pressed in at a tremendous speed, keen on splitting them each in 2. Okay, let's blow up some more bread, guys. The gate was just on the other side of the restaurant, but they had to take the long way around in order to lose a giant rock lobster snapping at their heels. Waiting along their detour had been a horde of monsters too many to count.
なんとかギリギリ。
Sojiro called out a response, recalling just how narrowly he had avoided his head being severed clean from his body.
ってまうわ、なんだあれ。焼きたてか。
Oh, are they freshly baked? Oh my god, these people are so dumb.
そうみたいね。要するに下級兵士よ。
Aoko halted her sprint and set her crest into full operation.
7、6、5メートル。あの程度ならスナップだけで事足りる。
Sliding along the brick path, she brandished her right arm. She loosed a shower of magic bullets. Snap was a single action spell that favored rate of fire over power, and it mowed down the monsters with satisfying
青崎そっちも。
props.
了解。
Blue explosions loomed along the lamplit promenade. Aoko's current of fire fanned out. It was a marvelous star-mean fireworks show? Whatever that meant. The toy bread man turned to charcoal.
いける。数でこそ押されてるけど、この状態が続くなら逃げ切れる。しずきくん、そっちは。
いない、空いてる。ここからなら入り口の東側に出られるはずだ。
With a magical barrage that would leave an average spellcaster blue in the face, the novice mage broke through the siege. Meanwhile, a single bird keenly watched everything unfold. Well, that's not good, chat. She's just sitting there. Chirp, cheep, 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 chirp. Oh, it's one of her familiars. The moment the blue bird descended into its master's field of vision, it made its high-pitched call. The girl listened expressionlessly to the
構わ
report.
ないわ。予想通りよ。撃つこと、壊すことしか脳がなくても、青子の魔力の使い方は波じゃないから。
The robin flapped its wings as it tweeted in response. No way, they got Twitter back then? Perhaps it was criticizing Alice for complimenting Alco. Perhaps it was jealous of Alco for being praised by Alice. Alice could barely make sense of its chirping rant. Alco was a novice mage. Until just 2 years ago, she had grown up with no background in magecraft. Compared to Alice, who was raised as a witch from birth, Alco possessed far less talent and experience. There is simply no comparison to be made. In a contest of skills in magecraft, 10 times out of 10, Alice would be declared the victor. However, that narrative changed when it came to a battle for life or death. Alice was not the type of mage suited to combat, while Alco, on the other hand, was built for it. In a contest that pitted magical energy against magical energy, even Alice would concede that Alco had the upper hand. Alco's manipulation of magical energy was extraordinary. The scale of her magic circuits was smaller than that of Alice, but their rotational speed, durability, and output quality, not to mention efficiency, were otherworldly. That was Alco Aozaki's hallmark. Though she had many failings when handling sophisticated formulae, in just 2 years of practice, Alco had surpassed Alice in simple formulae that merely required an energy input. She also had a genius's instinct and adaptability. Though Alco was not particularly proficient at executing magecraft, she was terrifyingly fast. If she had been born outside the Aozaki clan, she would have doubtless risen to fame as a competitive sharpshooter.
でも、残念ね。
In a straight shootout, Alice did not stand a chance. Alice had never bothered to learn primitive magecraft like mage bullets in the first place. She was the classic puppeteer. The familiar served as her arms and legs to carry out all the particulars of a battle.
制限時間には気づいているわよね、青子。魔力はいくらでも貸してあげるけど、あなたの魔弾はあと半時で値崩れするわ。
Chirping as if in agreement, the robin took flight. It had been nearly 10 minutes since Alice had made the amusement park into her domain. To what would the green fog give birth next? Aoko and Sojiro, still running about, would soon come to understand the gravity of their situation.
Shizuki-kun, 正門ってこっち？
ああ、その店を曲がれば出口だ。
Running non-stop at full speed had them at their limits. Their breath ragged, the duo rounded a corner at a breakneck pace. Amusement park though it was, this was still the infamous Kitsy Land. It would have taken a high school student 20 minutes to sprint the entire circumference of the park. And though they were now intimately familiar with the park's geography, it was changing beyond recognition. The transformation was not limited to the park's residents either.
青崎、
何を？
言いたくないんだけど、この遊園地広くなってないか。
Uh-oh, Spaghetti-O. It was. Their problem wasn't as mundane as mistaking the location of the exits nor the strange terrain. No, the park was warping and twisting in upon itself. Even as they ran, its structure was expanding and growing like that of a living creature. Wait, this is like the classic type moon song. Soon the pair noticed that the mob encircling them had grown even stronger. Entrusting her back to Sojiro, Aoko summoned all of her effort just to keep them from whining. No one would blame Sojiro for cowering in shock, but for Aoko to do the same, he bore responsibility for causing and then dragging him into this mess. He could not afford to succumb to panic.
大丈夫。落ち着け私。遊園地の果てはある。遠いけど、鉄柵はちゃんと見える。フラットスナークだって制限なしってわけじゃない。外に逃げるって選択は正しいはず。現状、外までは目算で1キロぐらいだけど。
Up until now, they had been too concerned with simply running. Their breathing had become labored. If they had to run another mile without rest, they'd end up collapsing along the way.
体大丈夫か？
え？
The whisper from behind pulled Aoko back to reality.
大丈夫だけど、ちょっと一息入れたいわね。
賛成。ここから休みなしで外周まで走るのは。
驚いた。しずきくんも外まで走ろう派とは。
She let slip a giggle. Far from debilitated by panic, her comrade in arms had been analyzing the situation and forming an escape plan.
ちょっとだけ建物に逃げ込むのは？
気は進まないけど、それしかないわね。
The breadmen had them completely surrounded. This might have been a problem for an average person, but for Aoko, breaking through their formation to get to the building would be a cinch. The issue was...
問題は、どんな店を選ぶかってこと。
She considered the characteristics of the transforming park, what would pose a danger and what was safe. The most important factor was not the strength or the complexity of the building.
そうだ。選ぶならあの単純さで正しいはず。しずきくん、あっち。
After routing the monsters, Aoko hopped behind the counter, soon followed by Sojiro.
カウンターに隠れてて。
Like she was in a western shootout, Aoko squared off against the monsters using the counter as cover. ビンゴ。ここならスナーク化しないんだ。 Snarkify. After assessing the current state of the enemy, Aoko sat down under the counter.
あいつらは？
店の周りで地団打踏んでるわ。理由があってね。
Aoko gave the perplexed Sojiro a grin and took a moment to catch her breath. She heaved a heavy sigh of relief and fatigue.
とりあえずコーヒーブレイクね。ここは遊園地の中でも遊びのない場所だから、あいつらにとっては鬼門なのよ。レジスターも調理器具も最近のものだし、擬人化されたマスコットもないし、スナーク化するにはちょい文明犬すぎるってこと。
スナーク？
あいつらの名前よ。つけたのは私じゃなくてアリスなのかしらね。あの子の性格的にちょっと想像できないけど、まあとにかくそういう名前。
Perhaps now at ease from knowing they were safe, Sojiro seemed enthralled in her explanation. Aoko could not help but chuckle as Sojiro nodded sagely. It was certain that he had no idea what she was talking about. You and me both, buddy. Normally this would have irritated her, but this time she was grateful for the warmth of his strange sobriety.
それはともかく、調子良さそうだな、青崎。
Mistaking her smile for a composure, Sojiro broke into a smile himself. It was just another link in a chain of misunderstandings, but there was no need to redress it.
あれ？あなたから見てもわかる？私のマダンの威力が上がっているの。
そりゃミラーハウスで散々追いかけ回されたからな。あの時と同じ動作なのに物騒さが増していれば嫌でもわかる。でもいいのか？確か数に限りがあるとか言ってただろう。もう随分撃っちまったけど20、30じゃ効かないぞ。
あんた時々あれよね。
ん？
Her opinion of him improved just a little bit.
なんでもない。私の魔弾の威力が上がっているのは単純に魔力の濃度の問題。さっきから霧がかかってるでしょ。あれ全部魔力なのよ。弾を撃つための燃料と思って。
Learning. Magical energy was divided into two broad categories. First was odd, produced inside a mage's body. Second was mana, which filled the atmosphere. At the moment, the amusement park had turned into a fairy tale land overflowing with mana. Although it meant nothing to the average person, to a mage it was a paradise where spells could be cast as much as one pleased.
じゃあ残り魔力とやらは気にしなくていいのか。注意すべきは怪我と体力だけ。
まあ個人的な責任においてはその限りね。
Sojiro breathed a sigh of relief. From Sojiro's perspective, more so than the monster she mowed down, Aoko was the biggest bully on the playground. If this was Fate, they'd probably have to refuel their magical energy here, if you know what I mean. He'd been concerned about what would happen should her magical energy be exhausted, but luckily for him, he was far from surrendering her crown.
頼りにしてくれるのは嬉しいけど、ぬか喜びよ。あんな雑魚たち、ただ動いているだけのガラクタなんだから。スナーク本体は当然として、アリスが他の童話の怪物を出してきたら、私じゃどうにもならない。
Oh my god, the actual snark? No weighing.
他の童話の怪物。遊園地をこんな風に変えたやつ以外にまだいるのか？
そう。プロイキッシャーって名付けられた、私たちでさえ目を背けたくなる反則。不可能な夢物語をも再現する時代に取り残されたデタラメよ。
Sojiro's expression seemed to be calling her out on the hypocrisy.
あのね、私たちはちゃんと現代に寄り添った魔術師よ。できないこともあるし、当たり前のことだけど、近代兵器にはかなわない。20世紀、まあいろんな戦争の後押しで兵器の進化は私たちを超えちゃったから。けどあの子のは違う。どんなに人間の技術が進歩しようと関係ないって怪物なの。例えばあのブレッドマンいるでしょ。あいつには自動拳銃とか効かないわよ。多分意味が分かっていないから。
Aoko casually gestured outside past the counter.
アリスの使い魔は全てが空想によってこねられた神秘なの。
I'll see what she did there needed.
前提からしてありえないことだから、通常の物理法則と折り合いが悪い。空想と現実は両立しないっていうごく当たり前の理由でね。
なるほど。ブレッドマンってのはあの動く焼きたてパンのことなんだな。
Yes, bread. Sojiro seemed to have ignored the majority of Aoko's explanation and only reacted to the part that caught his curiosity.
話を戻すけど、あいつらと近代兵器の相性は最悪。ロケット弾でも効果はないわ。意思の疎通、秩序の共有ができてないから。プロイキッシャーにとって彼らの世界には存在しないもの、意味がわからないものは触れることなく無産する。彼らに通じるのは同じ神秘を帯びた魔力だけっていうデタラメぶりよ。もう完全に概念空間っていうか概念宇宙っていうか。
No, she didn't say it. Osmos.
要するにあいつらは伝承防御っていう特別なルールを持っていて、単純に強い力、強い魔術じゃ効果は薄いの。元になった童話にちなんだ欠点をつかないと倒せない。
Sounds bullshit.
ギリシャ神話のアキレスあたり分かりやすい例えなんだけど、知ってる？
Sojiro shook his head.
無事帰れたら飛び丸あたりに教えてもらって。定番だけどいい話よ、あれ。
Sojiro was feeling pretty lost, but he did his best to grasp the situation. He thought that Floyd kickshaws were scary enough to chaos or to chase Alco and that puppet from before out of the house barefoot. Certain the scene before them was the stuff of nightmares, but Sojiro had a different way of thinking.
やっぱり青崎の方が怖くないか？
あんた死ぬの？
Sojiro raved in protest, silently pointing out that she had made his case for him.
あのね、今私たちを取り囲んでるのはおまけに過ぎないの。アリスにとってあのブレッドマンもロブスターもソーセージ屋のミンチマシーンも全部が全部私が撃ってる魔弾より価値がない。いい？あの動くマスコットたちはね、ただのおまけなの。アリスが解放した童話の怪物の一呼吸みたいなものなのよ。
呼吸ってこれが？
私だって考えたくないわよ。でもそれが現状。たった一体の童話の怪物だけで私たちは手一杯。そういうわけだからアリスがあと一体でも追加したら諦めて。
She was just like mowing them down. How is one of them gonna keep her busy or make her want to give up?
追加ってこれに制限はないのか？
あの子が出し惜しみしなければまだ何体かストックはあるでしょうけど、まあ成立する条件はあるわね。例えば川がないと目を覚まさない怪物もいる。この遊園地噴水はあるけど川はないでしょ。元になった童話縛りなの、あの子の使い魔は。
童話ってかけそばとか？
True.
ここに川がないのは不幸中の幸いね。もしあったらもっと直接制圧に向いたやつが出てきてた。
Alco continued completely ignoring Sojiro.
話の続きだけど、アリスの魔術の基本はマザーグースって知らないか。イギリスの歌で遊び心に富んだメルヘンチックな内容よ。ただそっち系のプロイキッシャーは怖くないの。みんなそれなりになんとか魔術にも落とし込める範囲だから。
聞きたくないんだけど、そっち系じゃないのは？
マザーグースを下地にしたとある創作童話系。あの子のお母さんが好きでね。こっち系のはどいつもこいつも尋常じゃない。
I have a feeling we're gonna
私たち
see
か
one
ら
of
見ても
them.
勘弁してって言いたくなるわ。でこの遊園地を生き返らせたのはこっち系よ。多分フラットスナークってやつだと思う。私も聞き流していたから詳しくはわからないけど。
Sojiro swallowed the discomfort making its way up his throat. He really wanted her to explain things a little less vaguely, but something she had just said necessitated further investigation.
待て青崎、あの子の話を聞き流したってなんで？
Damn, fucking got her.
いや説明してもらったのは随分と前だし、あの頃はアリスの話あんまり信じられなかったのよね。私が素人だと思って大げさに自分の魔術を語ってくれてるな、舐められてるなとか。
Oh, I see. In truth, if anyone hadn't taken the lesson seriously, it was Aoko. She would learn that lesson firsthand soon enough when she experienced just how real Alice's monsters were. She'd also discover how heretical the mainster witches truly were in the world of magecraft.
その聞き流した内容は
何でも強力な結界を張るプロイだって。アリスが受け継いだプロイは山ほどあるけど、その中でもえりすぐりの一つよ。捨てられたもの、忘れられたものを童話的に蘇らせるやつで、今まで誰も破ったことがないとか。それでついたあだ名が触れられぬもの。
フラットスナークじゃないのか？
それもあだ名。とにかく正体がわからないやつばっかりなんで、一つの個体に複数の名前が付けられるの。フラットスナークはその中でも正体不明さはトップランクのデタラメぶりよ。
トップランク？
あなたルイス・キャロルのスナーク狩りって本知ってる？
I surprisingly have not.
いや、そもそもルイス・キャロルというのは
そっからか。ドジスン教授はそうね、特殊性癖を持った妄想紳士ってとこ。まあこっちは別にどうでもいいか。今重要なのは彼が残した著作の方。スナーク狩りはね、スナークって呼ばれる正体不明の怪物を捕まえようと奔走する冒険家たちの話なの。
Okay.
キャロルらしい皮肉ばっちり、支離滅裂、意味不明、結末不在の本当に困った本で、一行は島で苦しみつつ最終的にはスナークを見つけるものの、見つけたベイカーは唐突に姿を消して終わってしまう。よくわからないもの探しに奔走する人間の風刺なんだけど、この遊園地において誰がベイカーで何がスナークか
Just
言
make
うま
sure
で
we
も
don't
ない
add
でし
any
ょ。
emotes that aren't we haven't already gone to yet. Akko elected not to share this, but Flat Snark had other popular names as well. The Enigmatic Island, the Five-Dimensional Plane. These names are not given to it by Alice, but rather muttered by mages who the monsters defeated. In mathematics, snark is a term used in graph theory to refer to contradictory and impossible planar graphs. A plane proven to be unable to exist in this world was given the name after an ill-fated existence paradoxical in nature. The fairy tale monster ascribed this name was said to hold no form discoverable by man. Aoko also declined to mention something else. Flat Snark was a fairy tale monster that could grow. It would hide somewhere in the amusement park, continuously exhaling magical energy until the park completely transformed into a fantasy land.
脅かしてもしょうがないし。
何か言ったか？
別に。簡単に言って、童話世界の再生がフ
Oh,
ラ
she
ットスナ
talking
ーク
to
の
the
力なの。
audience there? That's funny.
この遊園地との相性は抜群でしょうね。何しろもともとが童話を元にした遊び場だから。
If this had been a business district, for example, Flat Snark would have passed for far less of a threat. At most, its power would be limited to projecting the shadow of a dinosaur onto a building's window panes.
あ、だからここは安全だって。ん？
Sojiro realized that something was wrong when he noticed a gluttonous liquid dripping onto his back. Alright, chat. That's enough of this stream. Have a good night. See you next time. I'm done here. Bye-bye. He looked up to the ceiling. Their eyes met. Before he had a chance to think, Sojiro hopped up from the floor.
青崎外だ！
Taking the initiative, oh my god, he rolled a 20. He jumped out from behind the counter.
何して。
Trying to stop him from committing an act of suicide, she also came to her feet. Immediately, she noticed something coming to life overhead.
やば。
Great, I hate it here. The gargantuan mouth clamped shut. With no mascot to speak of, the burger joint itself began to transform into one giant monster.
もう
No, not the
なんで
burger
天井に
joint.
ピエロの絵なんて描いてんのよあの店。普通もっと違うところに労力割かない？そんなにピエロが好きなら入り口にでも飾っとけ。
Alco aired out her grievances as she ran. There was no safe haven left. Moment by moment, the last remnants of civilization were being eroded away by fairy tales. The amusement park had reached the final stage of snarkification. This is like Californication. It was just not the mascot characters that had been granted life. Like the burger joint, even the building had began to transform. The roller coaster that made its way about the park writhed and twisted like a Chinese dragon. Alco and Sojiro stared, dumbfounded by the Ferris wheel, which had grown to over 250 feet in height. Hordes of breadmen closed in on them as if to offer tickets. No, not the bread
整理は
people.
間に合ってるっての。
Mobs of trinkets, actual kickshaws rampaged the park. Whenever a hole was punched in the envelope, it was instantly filled. It was a battle of attrition with no end in sight. But that was a matter of course, as there were few fairy tales about limited resources.
なんかどうしようもないぞ。こいつら増える一方だ。
I don't know if you can cannibalize, like eating them wouldn't be
スナーク本体を探して。
cannibalizing them.
童話の怪物には本体に当たる器物があるの。それさえ壊せば遊園地から出られるはず。
本体ってどんな？
さっき言ったでしょ。童話の怪物は現実にないものだって。今までいなかったおかしなやつとか現実じゃありえないもの。それが本
Everything to
体。
this dude is weird and impossible. What do you mean?
おかしなやつって例えば？
Yeah, exactly.
だから命のある人形とか空飛ぶ豪華。
Akko paused her firing for a moment. After saying this out loud, she realized just how deep their grave was dug. The amusement park was a treasure trove of fairy tale-esque creatures on any given day. Who could say what was impossible amidst the newly transfigured knickknacks running around?
そっか、おかしくないやつなんて一つもないんだ。この中に紛れ込んでる。
Hoping that she was wrong, Alco bit her bottom lip. Flat snark was a type of ploy that deployed bounded fields. Seeing as it was commanding so many familiars, it would not be unusual for its main body to have little or no defenses. Wait, what? You get bread with birria? Aww. Furthermore, if it was modeled from a story about it being untouchable and unidentifiable, it would be logical to assume that it would collapse on itself shortly after being
逆に言え
discovered.
ば見つければ私たちの勝ち。そんな脆いやつが雑魚に紛れ込む。木の葉を隠すなら森の中って言うけど。
This was closer to the truth than Alco realized. As long as there was the slightest possibility of being hit by one of Alco's stray bullets, it would not dare approach in front of them. Its true form was orchestrating the park from somewhere safe. How about you quit FGO instead of playing FGA? Any truers?
でもどこかに見えているはず。スナークは本の主題だもの。常にページのどこかにいないと主人公の資格がない。
Well, where? Put very simply, the Ferris wheel was the safest location in the park as well as a symbol of its past glory. Perhaps...
あの子を捕まえるのは？
No, I haven't been logging in. Her eyes opened wide at the sudden suggestion. While Alco had been trying to come up with a plan to overcome the stalemate, it seemed Sojiro had been racking his brain as well. His proposal was a simple one. If they could not find the snark, they just needed to take out its master, Alice. Bro, you don't need to farm storm pods if you're not playing the game. Alice had not moved at all from the clock tower. Even from there, they could make out her figure draped in moonlight. Isn't it cold up there? Isn't it boring? She should get some tea.
それは一番ダメ。アリスを殺してもフラットスナークは止まらないし、このトンデモが外に溢れ出すことになる。だいたい私じゃあの子を殺せないから、よくて半殺しがいいところ。
I don't think Alec has perms. A breadman angered at the insults hurled toward its master moved to attack and was mercilessly burned to a crisp. The two stood back to back, catching their breath, with no plan to speak of and no route of escape. They had reached rock bottom. Meanwhile, the oddities were forming a circle around their prey as if they smelled blood in the water. Were they to be dragged into a bakery or the oven? Minced in the meat grinder at the butcher shop? Skewered and paraded around at the top of the carousel? Walked the plank of the thorny pirate ship? After 2 years of slumber, they were eager to welcome their new guests.
一応聞いておきたいんだけど。
Bro, me too, Auber.
手短にね。今考え事してるから。
ああ、あの連中が何をしたいか嫌っていうほど伝わってくるんだけど。
その疑問はなかったわ。連中の人間嫌いは遊園地の怨念とフラットスナークの性格じゃない。基本的にまともなやついないから、アリスの使い魔って。あ、でも。
Alco was unable to deny that there were some similarities.
それは結構。それで、青崎の考え事って止める方法考えついたのか。
期待させて悪いけどお手上げ。ま、あんたが殺されれば止まるでしょうけど。
それは嫌だ。とりあえず逃げよう。
Oh, now he wants to live.
え、しずきくん
？She blinked in surprise at the sudden turn of events. Sojiro, who had until now been meekly following her lead, had grabbed Alco's hand and pulled her with him into a head-on charge at the swarm of bread. I can't take this seriously. In an attempt to break out of the encirclement.
意味わかんなすぎ。なんで今の流れでそうなるのよ、あんたは。
Alco nonetheless followed Sojiro's uncharacteristically gung-ho lead, cursing him all the while. Alone, he had no chance of breaking through the surrounding wall of enemies with brute force. Alco regained her bearings and let fly a spray of magic bullets ahead of Sojiro. They burst through the net and ran as hard as they could. At this point, all that was left to do was what they had planned from the outset. Get out of the park. But not before addressing what needed to be addressed.
なんでよ、さっきはあんなに諦めよかったのに。
Alco could not begin to comprehend Sojiro's
ミラー
reaction.
ハウスの時と今は違うだろ。いいから走れ。
違わないわよ。あんたを殺そうとした私も、あんたを殺したいアリスも。
Though she wondered what was getting her so worked up, Alco did not stop. She told herself that the degree of Sojiro's stupidity charging the breadman so recklessly had caused her to lose her cool.
あのね、一緒に逃げてるぐらいで勘違いしないでくれる？言っとくけど私、明日になったらまたあんたを殺しに行くから。死にたくないってんなら、ここで私からも逃げ出したら？
それはまた今度の話だろう。だいたい青崎に殺されるのならいいけど、あの子に殺されるのは嫌だ。
Interesting response. Yeah, I've heard them say that before.
だからなんで？
だって顔も知らない。話したことさえない相手だ。
So he's okay to die to someone if, Whoa, English in chat. Mods. So she's okay to, like... Or he's okay to die to someone if He knows them? Okay. It was like someone had doused water over her blazing fury. Aoko's anger was snuffed out by the absurd simplicity of his reasoning.
顔も知らないって。
Could it be that Sojiro did not mind being killed by someone as long as he had met them? Aoko grimaced as she followed him. Saving, question mark? Saving. From her spot atop the clock tower, the girl observed the growth of her familiar. Flat Snark. A savior of the discarded. It was a vile, vulgar fairy tale monster who provided those abandoned by fate with a glimmer of hope before snatching it away. Alice had it under her control, but she was still keen to keep the Snark from expressing its bad habits. After completing a lap around the park that had now reached the size of an entire town, the Robin made its situation report.
そう。外を目指しているの。
No, they're trying to make a fucking Sunday roast. What the fuck do you think they're trying to do? It seemed Aoko was prioritizing the safety of the boy, even if it resulted in wasting an entire day choosing not to capitulate on a decision was very much like her.
青子のことだから、時計台ごと私を焼き払いに来るかと思ったけど。
The blue bird cheeped in response. Was it denying its master's portrait of Aoko? Or agreeing that it was Aoko's style to do exactly that? An outsider might interpret its interjections either way.
退屈？
The robin jumped at being addressed so unexpectedly. It chirped and flapped its wings, like a flustered servant frantic to say otherwise.
珍しく気があったわね。いいわ。せっかくのゲームだし。もう少しだけ盛り上げましょう。
Calmly, she pulled out a small object from her pocket. It was a dark gray Easter egg, and emanating from inside it was the ticking of a clock. The robin knew it to be a ploy kickshaw with a bad attitude, far exceeding Flat Snark's, known to be among the best in one-on-one situations. Oh my god,
いって
animation.
らっしゃい。称える時間は20分に設定したわ。いつも通り、控えめに壊れてきて。
And together with the witch's breath, the egg filled with praise disappeared. Suddenly, a strong wind swept through the park. The words, "I could have killed them all by myself," floated through the air. It was the disappointment of something enormous that was visible to all yet overlooked. Saving. Aoko and Sojiro continued their dash toward the boundary, separating the park from outside. Oh, my breadman. The curio horde that stood in their way had reduced in number. The iron fence that separated the two from the outside world was just over 300 yards away. Fortunately, there were no particularly large buildings barring their path. If the Ferris wheel had stood in their way, that would have spelled the end, but thankfully it had yet to reach its full strength. The only things that appeared before them were weak oddities that could easily be handled by Aoko's simple magecraft. She would have said make it to the fence if only her lungs would allow it. Since Aoko was utilizing the ample mana filling the park, her tank of magical energy was nearly full. Moreover, the condition of her body circuits was steadily improving to the extent that she would be able to unleash at least one all-out assault. Until something unusual was hovering above her field of vision. It was locked on Sojiro, hovering 10 feet above him, over to one side.
しずきくん、ちょっと。
ああ、さっきからついてきてる。
Sojiro had seemingly noticed it before Aoko, hence his previous awkward glances towards the sky. In truth, it would have been stranger for him not to notice, as the thing was practically glued to him. In terms of its size, the floating object measured about 3 feet in diameter. Yeah, that's a big egg. Tiles covered its exterior, about which a multitude of spinning lights danced. Moon, grass. I read the top one. SSARC. Grass? Moon grass? Oh, I see. Queen Alice. Moon. Grass? It's a moon crab.
卵かな。
Sojiro asked, not really sure what to call it.
卵卵って言ったら割れる卵。
Wow, she's so smart. That's our girl. What are those little dust clouds? Her bullets bounced off like it was made of rubber. That trait, the ability to deflect all outside interference, confirmed to Aoko that thing was undoubtedly a ploy kickshaw.
やっぱり外からのルールじゃ壊れないか。しずきくん、あれから絶対に目をそらさないで。いい。何があっても見続けること。視界の隅に入れとくだけでいいから。
ああ。
Aoko picked up her pace as she barked orders. The Eggman who sat on a wall. He would crack just as the tale spoke of. Nothing anyone could do or say would cause him to fall, but the moment they stopped looking, he would tumble down and break into pieces.
いわく、王様の軍隊でも元に戻せない数の破片。
It was the Mother Goose poem Humpty Dumpty. If Sojiro was its target, then the moment he averted his gaze, it would tumble and explode.
まあ、爆発するかどうかは知らないけど。
Either way, it was going to scatter something troublesome when it fell. Its oval shape, the keyhole adorning the front, and writing inscribed upon it, they all made her anxious. It was an egg. That meant it was going to hatch at some point. Even if he continued his stare, once the time came for whatever was inside to come out, they would have even less ability to conserve their energy.
青崎、早すぎないか。あまり全力で走ると。
後のことは考えないで。いいからしずきくんは卵だけに集中して。
No more breadmen! Anything but the breadman bloodbath. At this critical juncture, Breadman stepped out to join the egg and block their path.
邪魔！
No! The Breadmen were marching forth in a grand battalion. At her level of firepower, Aoko should have easily mowed them down. However,
肩焼きかっこの。
they have a hard crust. If Snap failed to do the job, that meant it was time for her to put her crest to use. Draw. A formula-triggered bullet encased in a full wind jacket. If her previous shots were the equivalent of a machine gun volley, then this was her artillery shot. Oh my god. The hard crust bread that had absorbed her snap without a dent scattered into thousands of tiny pieces at her draw's torrent. No, my bread.
うわ。
Of course, the destruction did not end with just the breadmen. What had once been a brick road was now thoroughly stripped of its pavement. The nearby stalls had been warped into twisted seal skeletons. It was a spectacle that made Sojiro... Did they spell his name wrong? Question what the greater obstacle to their escape was. The wall of breadmen or Aoko's ability to lay waste to things.
ちょっとなんで距離取るのよそこ。そばにいないと危ないじゃない。ほらもっとこっち。言っとくけどあんたがあいつらに囲まれちゃったらアウトよ。私人質とか意味ないタイプだし、そもそも区別して撃つとかそういうのできないし。
This made a lot of sense to Sojiro. He not fully appreciated the part about hostages, but he got the gist of it.
つまり今はどこであろうと危険なのか。
あんたね。
Offended though she was by his typical naive response, she could not help but be impressed. Sojiro was a straight arrow through and through. His eyes stayed firmly focused on the egg overhead, even amidst the chaos of the melee unfolding before him.
その分なら安心か。物分かりは悪いけど、一度言われたことはきっちり守るあたり。
そんなことより青崎、俺の気のせいならいいんだけど、さっきのパン。
まあね、あいつら少しずつ強くなってきてるわ。
Monka.
大量生産が軌道に乗ったんで、今度はクオリティアップをテーマにしたのかも。しずきくんでもお察しの通り、ここからは手強くなっていく一方よ。あのパンたちでさえ個体差が出てきたみたいだし。
Oh no, they're AI breadmen. It's even worse than we
考え
imagined.
たくないけど、そのうちジャム塗ったりレタス乗っけたり、果
Start
ては合
spreading
体したり
themselves
して。
with jelly? What the fuck? What am I reading? Though she was joking, her eyes were dead serious. Sojiro shuddered at the thought of the situation growing even more dire.
じゃあそのうちミラーハウスの人形ぐらいに怖くなるのか、あいつら。
間違いなくね。そこまでレアなパンになったら、私も自分だけで手一杯になる。ところでしずきくん、ああいうのと喧嘩できる？
It is his face. Sojiro shook his head, a look of complete aversion upon his
でし
face.
ょ？なら急ぎましょう。いろいろ余裕ないんだから。
Aoko took a deep breath and began to sprint once again. Far in the distance, through the fog, the iron fence waited 300 paces away. As long as nothing happened, they would make it there in one piece. Oh my god, finally a One Piece reference. Sojiro followed after Aoko, holding on to that all too convenient hope. We get a saving. Alright, I'm gonna hit the bathroom really quickly. Okay, chat. BRB really quickly. I'm gonna run to the bathroom. Back in a minute. Go stretch your legs as well. Oh no, it wasn't. I just had to get more water too. Put my tea away. Okay. But hope was something ever fleeting. In fact, it lasted not even 300 yards. The edge of the amusement park may well have been the edge of the world. Well, we're fucked. Dozens of undulating horizons could be seen, crowding the sky like a giant cloud or a thick curtain, or perhaps groaning lips. It was the end of the road, the outer limit of an outrageous and fantastical realm. And yet, Alco found it to be much like the last page of an enormous picture book. They do a good job of like throwing in animations and stuff like that. Came out in 2012. Yeah, I'm 14 years old. I don't know if it was that ahead of its time, but yeah, maybe I'll take your word for it. I don't read many visual novels, so. The sight turned her mind blank. Well, this is about as bad as it gets, she thought. The snark, this island of despair, had at least brought Alco to her knees as she stared at the swelling border. Some Vienza came out in 20. Wait, really? That's crazy. What is this emote? The park indeed had an end. Even now, as Alco and Sojiro had expected, a fence divided the amusement park from the residential area neighboring it. It had both doubled in height and been made sturdier, another hurdle she had foreseen before even laying eyes on it. Expecting it to have been snarkified, Alco had come prepared to demolish an obstacle or two. But this construction before her went far beyond a mere wall. It was an ocean that separated the underworld from the mortal one. The iron fence was like a restless, surging sea. One or two walls could easily be toppled, even 10 or 20 could be dealt with one way or another. Between the power left in her body and that which filled the park, putting on a brave front was within her power. She could fully mobilize her circuits and her crests to the point of burnout, a last-ditch effort like some reenactment of the parting of the Red Sea.
でもそれで終わり。
Even if a path could be opened, she would not have the energy left to walk it. Bet she can even do a light puzzle in RuneScape. And it was obvious that would become of her, or what would become of her afterward. The residents would hardly forgive her for wreaking such havoc around their park. Like ants drawn to honey, they would swarm the helpless girl and tear her to pieces. Despondent and exhausted, she felt the faint sting of remorse. Escaping the park. Looking back on how they had gotten here, Alco recognized that her choices had been her undoing. Under the golden full moon, beams of steel bent and merged like wire frame sculptures. It was only a matter of time before the amusement park itself became one colossal monster. The horde of familiars gathered in the plaza where Alice was had formed an impenetrable blockade around her. Just above the head of the boy beside her, the whispering egg, called Scratch Dumpty, continued to shuffle what appeared on its surface.
Aozaki!
しずきくん。
The boy's voice snapped Alco out of her trance. If only for a moment. The stark reality of the situation quickly dawned on the novice mage. The sheer hopelessness of it all as it ripped out and snatched away any will she had to resist.
ゲートに行こう。ここはどうしようもないけど、入り口ならもうちょっとマシだろ。フラットスナークだっけ？こいつにもルールがあるって言ったじゃないか。なら、これは役割の問題だ。初めから鉄柵は通れない壁だけど、ゲートなら出入り口として機能しているかもしれない。
Sojiro had not given in to panic. Aoko found herself honestly admiring Sojiro's ability to analyze Snark's characteristics given the circumstances. Now calm, she steeled her resolve.
そうね。確かに門はあると思う。けど、たどり着くのは難しいわ。一番弱かった焼きたてパンですら、今はもうあれだもの。
Oh my god, the bread's going stale.
広場や入り口には、もっと上等なのがたむろしてるだろうし、門だって、あの観覧車以上の怪物かもしれない。確か、大きなキッツィちゃんだったでしょ。
青崎はゲートには行かないのか。
まあね。それよりこっちの方が現実的だし。
Aoko took another glance at the undulating iron fences. It was too late to achieve their goal of making it out alive. In that case, she decided to prioritize the other promise she had made.
今からこの鉄柵を壊すから、あなたはそこから外に出て。それで、私の役割はおしまいよ。
Though her words were few, her tone told the whole story. She was telling him to escape by himself.
信じられない。こんなの、青崎だけじゃ壊せないだろ。
私だけならね。でも、今はこの遊園地が味方してる。燃料がこれだけあるんだから。それでも一回が限度だから、穴を開けたら、あんたには全力で走り抜けてもらうしかないけど。
She would carve a path through this iron sea of fences, gambling on one final effort, a great incantation to launch the biggest projectile she could manage. As an outsider, Sojiro could not even begin to imagine just how much of a burden this would be for her. All he could imagine was a hazy vision of Aoko being left behind in this park. What would happen to her? Would that girl in black come to save her? Cruel as it was to imagine, he knew she would not. After Aoko had exhausted her very best in order to save him, that girl would not stay her hand. The only way Alice would let Aoko off the hook was if Aoko killed Sojiro as payment. And so...
20メートルぐらい離れてて。準備に手間取るけど、その卵の表面が茹で上がるまでには終わらせるから。
Hard boiled. It went without saying that this was the only path.
待ってくれ。俺を逃がすって言うけど、それに意味はあるのか、青
Oh
崎。
my god, it was March 7th. Damn, I feel so bad.
ないけど。外に出られたところでアリスから逃げ切れるとは思えないし。けど、これぐらいは最後の意地よ。守るって言ったんだから、できるところまでやらないと。
Surprised by her seemingly moral stance, Sojiro saw Aoko in a new light. But of course, Sojiro realized that she was not fighting for his sake, but for the sake of her pride.
そうだったな。けど、それなら俺だけ逃がすのはらしくないぞ。
何よ。いいから離れてて。
Aoko eased off just a bit. He recalled how an hour ago he had gotten the better of her.
青崎、まだ意地を張れるんなら他のことをやろう。このお化けみたいな鉄柵を壊せるなら他に壊すべきものがあるはずだ。
ないわよ。悪いけど、私は目に見えるものしか壊せないの。最後まで形のない希望にすがるとか考えるのも寒気がする。いい？今はフラットスナークなんかよりこの壁を壊してあんたを足抜けさせるのが私の現実。私に負える最大限の責任って。
逃げるのか。
Aoko was just about to turn her back on him when Sojiro clutched her hand. His words caused something inside of her to boil with rage. It was as though someone had set her heart on fire. The surprise that pricked open her true feelings and the disappointment she felt toward herself thawed her frozen limbs.
誰が逃げるのはそっちで逃がしてあげるのはこっちだって言うのよ。甘く見ないで。いざとなったら遊園地ごと爆破してみせるわ。
そうか。ならここで俺を逃がすのは無駄だな。その気迫は本命のために取っておこう。それまでは俺も手伝うから。
は？手伝う？それこそ無駄な気遣いよ。あったまきた。いいから逃げろバカ。だいたい走り詰めで息も絶え絶えなやつなんか使えないわよ。
そりゃいい加減ヘトヘトだけど、そういう青崎なんか疲れ以上に傷の方が傷んでるだろ。
Not to mention the injury to her back that Aoko had nearly forgotten about. Even now, she couldn't ignore the pain that the automaton had inflicted on her spine. With iron will, she'd managed to push it out of her mind, mostly. Is that like Steel Skin, my favorite RuneScape prayer?
魔術とか抜きにすれば、まだ俺の方がマシじゃないか。入り口までおぶっていくことぐらいなら、なんとか。
できないことは口にしないで。もういいから言って。慣れているもの、私は。でもあなたは違う。だからいいの。
Oh my god, his first time! Chills! His first time! Everyone clap for him. Woo! Got his first time in. The fact that they were a team, the fact that she would still have to kill him after all of this. None of the irony was lost on her as she said these words. It didn't matter anymore. Ooh, fancy boxes. Still, Sojiro didn't let go of her hand. He gripped it even harder. His expression was the same as ever. Aoko frowned, trying to figure out if he was upset with her.
確かに、こういうのは初めてだ。
Don't say it like that, bro. Please, I can't take it seriously. Please, come on, man. You can't say things like that in Nasu novel. I can't, bro.
けど、山じゃ危険な目ぐらい合ってる。鹿に襲われたことだってあるんだぞ、俺は。
Yeah, bro, a deer. Oh dear. As a city girl, she had no idea what it meant to be attacked by a deer. But his determination was apparent enough. True. Bro, Amber, I read the Fate novel. Like, what could you expect? Like I told you, if this was Fate and this was written 30 years ago, they would have already been mana transferring. Deer are vicious. I'll take your word for it. True. Looking back on it now, he had maintained his composure through it all. A normal person would barely be able to walk through such panic. Perhaps growing up deep in the mountains, far from civilization, had taught him to stay calm in the face of so much.
だから信じてくれ。少しでいいから。
He spoke his plain, unadulterated feelings and released his hand. Oh, he's releasing something, all right. There is no lie in him. In fact, he was too honest, so much that she found it hard to believe him. Sojiro had no reason to go that far. As it stood, Aoko had no future. After confessing this and telling him to escape, why did this boy still offer to help a person like her?
わからない。どうしてそこまでするの？私に付き合えばあなたは死ぬのよ。
Dude, this guy's been asking for death for like the last 3 hours. What do you mean, why?
これが最後だから、ちゃんと考えてよね。あなたはここで逃げるべきよ。
それはわかるよ。でも行かない。
Fog, that's my goat. Sojiro answered immediately, realizing that Aoko was looking for his reason. This level of insight in Sojiro demanded a round of applause. Yeah, give it up for it. Woo! Clappa!
そうすると、青崎が死んでしまいそうだ。
His words were as His words were as irrational as always.
だから、どうしてそこまでするのよ、あんたは。
Brother, you're the one saving him. She was yelling out of frustration. After thinking for a moment, Sojiro replied,
そりゃ、君が好きだからだろ。
Holy fuck, we get... Oh my god, we already get an admission? That's crazy. What? Oh my god. Chills. Simple and to the point. His face seemed to ask why she would even question him so. There was a pause, no more than 2 seconds. His surprise attack had stopped Aoko in her tracks. His surprise attack. Alice was not the only one who had an ace up her sleeve. That line reached deeper even than Flat Snark could ever hope to. All Aoko could respond with was an expression of pure shock. It was simple, stubborn reason, the strongest kind on earth. Sojiro Suzuki was indeed incomprehensible to be able to work unconditionally with someone who was trying to kill him. But she felt as though she'd finally grasped a sliver of his true nature. Tobimaru and the others' assessments of him was correct, as vexing as it was to her to admit.
バカね。私はあなたのこと嫌い。
He laughed at her sour grumbling. At this point, he was used to her insults. Their clash of wills ended here. Aoko's blood ran hot from her blazing heart. If he was going to make a face like that, all she could do was to try to think of a way to get them both home.
私だって逃げっぱなしは性に合わないし。いいわよ。最後まで粘ってみる。それにしずきくんが付き合ってくれるなら。
Though her tone had lightened, there was still hesitation in her eyes. It was only natural. Aoko had not even a clue as to how to begin to fight the snark. If only she had just been a bit more skilled or had trained just a bit more, there might have been some way to look for it.
我ながら情けない。せめて正体を暴く手がかりでもあればいいんだけど。
Unconsciously, she let her apprehension show. Sniveling was pointless. She would just have to figure it out by herself. But...
ん？なんだ？正体さえ分かればいいのか？
え？
Aoko gave him a look as if to ask what that was supposed to mean.
いや、だからおかしなものはどれかってことだろ？
Sojiro also made a face that suggested she should have brought it up sooner. Ah yes, the two dumbasses.
わかるのあんた。
多分。いや、結構前から気になっていたんだけど。
Oh my god. Sojiro whispered in her ear quietly so as not to be overheard. It was certainly unexpected, but then again equally obvious. After he explained the mistake, she knew right away that he was correct. At least, she had an inkling of Flat Snark's original form, namely... saving. Wait, how the fuck did they strategize for 10 minutes? How did they get 10 minutes to themselves? After deliberating the Snark's true form and figuring out a plan of attack, the two exchanged nods in acceptance of their roles.
それじゃあ、ここからは別行動ね。でも、ミラーハウスの時みたいなのは勘弁してよ。この作戦の肝はあなたなんだから。開始1分でドジったら、本当に打つ手なしだからね。
He did kind of ruin it there, didn't he? Though she jabbed him for his previous failure as a decoy, her voice was bright. Aoko's original vigor had returned to her at Sojiro's discovery of the truth. Meanwhile, Sojiro was also getting serious in his own way. He took Aoko's warning to heart.
ならいいけど。いい？さっきと立場は反対よ。失敗したら死ぬのは私じゃなくてそっち。もうフォローに回れないから、できるだけ慎重にね。
分かってる。今更ながら、やっぱりさっき逃がしてもらえばよかったと思うぐらい慎重だ。
Sojiro nodded, telling her to leave it to him, though he made it sound like he was holding a grudge. It seemed to him to be the only way of showing her his resolve. Aoko let out a sigh of defeat. Once more, she couldn't figure him out.
ほんと、大バカなんだか大物なんだか。でも任せた。期待してるわ。
She wanted to say that she believed in him, but apparently that was too embarrassing for her. Aoko turned away from Sojiro and began to run. She had begun to think that maybe this change of pace was not so bad after all. These sections are so long, holy fuck. And so ended the intermission. The young cast members were handed their new lines. Whatever happened next, the night of witches had at long last entered its climax. Pog, which are the holy night? Pog, witch, pog, night, pog, climax, pog, pog, pog. Saving.
別行動あの二人が
She was filled with foreboding at the Robins report. Apparently, they had gone in opposite directions. The park's residents had set off after the boy witness. Set off after the boy witness. Like the boy wonder. Chip the boy wonder. And it would take them mere minutes to capture him, so the bird said.
どういうこと？追いかけているのは本当に彼？青子が変装しているのではなく。
The robin flapped its wings, chirping away any doubt. It had seen them with its own two eyes. Aoko was heading for the plaza, while the cocky brat was making a run for the roller coaster.
青子が彼を見捨てた？そんな簡単なことならいいけど。ダンプティは彼に張り付いているの？
Oh my god, Humpty Dumpty Pog. The robin nodded enthusiastically. It didn't know about the other birds, but with its superior night vision, it had seen that sucker clearly because he had moved to a high point.
ダンプティはなんて
Look
最
at the
後まで
bird
歌
go.
わせろ。こんな褒め殺したい間抜けはまたとない。ですって。
Scratch Dumpty was a ticking time bomb that would drop and detonate the moment his target averted its gaze. That is, as long as his target continued to observe him. In a way, he was a gentlemanly ploy kickshaw, though Alice wished he would forego such niceties when in battle.
そうね。視線を切らないだけではダンプティからは逃げられない。表面の詩が完成すれば扉が開く。
Okay, two things. One, do you see how uncomfortable this looks? What the fuck is she sitting on? She's sitting on like a little piece of like sliver here. There's like barely anything for her ass to be on. How ungodly uncomfortable you have to be sitting on this little sliver here. Holy fuck, I would lose my goddamn mind sitting on this thing. Also, why does it look like some high dude staring at her? She's there's no way she's floating here. That's crazy uncomfortable.
彼がどこまで逃げようと、あと少しでダンプティがしまってくれるわ。
Until the park, or rather the snark, was destroyed, Sojiro would not be able to escape. Which means the larger concern was Aoko. Aoko had promised to protect the boy, which begged the question, where was she running to?
ここにいる限り、青子の動向はつかめない。
Alice looked out over the park, ignoring the robin's attempt to get her attention with its plumage. Buttsnark had nearly reached its full size. It was a different breed of beast compared to the other cheap ploys. To her, it was one of the three most irreplaceable and precious familiars.
そうね。任せたわスナーク。青子が諦めない以上、あな。
Alice remained where she was, with the same historical merit as the troll under the bridge and the poison-clawed reptile. Buttsnark was one of Alice's ultimate ploys. One of her noise. She was placing her trust in its reputation and ability.
でも忘れないで。これはゲームよ。
Emu.
勝敗がついたのなら、私のところに帰ってきて。
The drifting fog ignoring its master's words. It was the one thing that Alice had misread. Flat Snark was a king even among the other ploys of terrible, vulgar antics. Death to the defeated, gruesome tragedy to the vanquished. It found no pleasure unless it brought about dramatic ruination of life and wealth. The fog billowed like wicked laughter. After all, only a king had the right to decide the fate of the vanquished, and the Snark's greed could not be contained. Thus, it hadn't even the slightest intent to play fair despite its master's orders. Saving. I want to get that saving logo as an emote. Over 100 feet high, one careful step at a time, the figure made its way gingerly up the track, which stretched into the heart of the amusement park. Oh, looks like a face again. He stayed his beating chest and the pounding of his breath. Even tiny movements were an obstacle to his progress. Amazingly, the one making this pale face advance higher and higher was Sojiro Suzuki. Far below, he saw that a horde of bread creatures had congregated by the roller coaster platform. As they bustled this way and that, their numbers continued to increase by the minute, seemingly cheering on Sojiro with raised arms as he made his ascent. Or rather, they jeered as if beckoning him to come
助かっ
down.
た。あれ、高いところは苦手なんだ。
Of course, neither did Sojiro, but his current state was the lesser of two evils. The only thing that followed him now was the floating egg. After heaving a huge sigh, Sojiro bent forward a bit and climbed the track that inclined toward the heavens. 150 feet now. If this were a skyscraper, he would be on the 16th floor. Oh my god, flashbang. A strong gust of wind whipped through his hair. Humans had an instinctual fear of heights. In particular, a place like this, which called forth visions of falling to one's death, would cause a person's knees to tremble against their will. It was an instinct that forewarned death, urging its master to return to the safety of the ground. It was a reasonable reaction. Climbing the roller coaster tracks went beyond funny stories and into the realm of fantasy. The strong winds and change in air pressure were a hindrance. His instincts screamed at him to stop, causing his limbs to go numb, his muscles to go limp, and his mind to race. Even if he had been tied to a lifeline, a mere 15 feet of climbing would still have caused his thoughts to freeze out of sheer terror. It would only get worse from here, exponentially so. Every foot forward increased the load on both his mind and his body by another degree.
よし。頂上まであと少し。
The burden on his mind notwithstanding, he carefully measured the toll on his body with every step. His legs, which had carried him running this far, threatened to buckle the moment he let down his guard. This fatigue was likely why Aoko had stressed that Sojiro's role was more dangerous than
待
hers.
てよ。逆を言うと、疲れてなければなんとかなると思ってたんだよな。あ。
Sojiro laughed as he stared at the floating egg. He reflected on the course of events that had led to this absurd situation. Not even 10 minutes ago, they had been engaged in conversation.
じゃあ次ね。正体が分かった以上、あとはどう壊すかを話し合いましょう。
Sojiro felt a shudder down his spine at Aoko's smug grin. In hindsight, Aoko had been more than happy at this point to make him do something absurd.
どう壊すかって、それなら。
Sojiro wondered aloud. From what he'd seen, Aoko had enough firepower to tear clean through the fence. He'd refrained from speculating about Flat Snark's true form because he'd felt there was nothing they could do about it even if they knew. But that had changed. For Aoko, the impossible was quite literally within her grasp.
そうでもないわ。私の目算だと、あと50メートル分、ギリギリで届かない。
Despair filled Sojiro's eyes. Aoko lifted a hand to her long hair and, with a magically charged fingertip, clipped a clean tuft of it.
足りない分は努力と根性ってね。あなたはできるだけ高いところまで逃げて。頃合いを見て合図を出すから。そうしたらこれを空に放ってくれる？しずきくんの役目はそれだけでいいから。
But based on where Aoko pointed her gaze, she did not really mean to leave it up to Sojiro to pick the highest place he could find. She was staring conspicuously at one of the amusement park's two main attractions, the roller coaster.
つまり、青崎とは別行動をとって、 あの怪物たちに追われながら高いところに逃げ込めと。
そういうこと。ほら、あのうねうね動き出してるコースターのレールとかよくない？
There were two demons in this park. Her smile made even Sojiro want to respond that it was far from perfect.
疑いたくはないんだが、本当はあの子とグルで俺を遠回しに殺そうとしてるんじゃないか。
あら、私に殺されるのならいいんでしょ？
人の出現を悪用するのは良くないと思う。
Sojiro hung his head. This was not sane. If he did as she said, he would die from exhaustion before Kitsy even had a chance to eat him.
私だって鬼じゃないわ。ほら、こっち向いて。おまじないかけてあげる。
ん？
It was the lightest of touches, close enough for their breath and skin to come in contact.
Oh.
Zaki, he finished with a hushed voice. For one of them, this was a rather mundane magecraft. For the other, it was a head-spinning, intimate ambush.
軽く、弱く、うまく、早く。チクタクチクタク。急げや急げ。
Tick-tock, tick-tock. Words that could not be produced by normal larynx, carrying a peculiar weight to them, reverberated against his eardrums. If words were given colors, then these would have been the color of her name, blue. Sojiro's exhausted body and burning blood gently cooled.
飛ぶ、泳ぐ、駆け抜ける。チクタクチクタク、汽笛を鳴らせ。
Tick-tock, tick-tock.
星はいつでも北の空。どこまでも、いつまでも。
I still don't understand what the smaller text above the bigger text means. In reality, it took but a few seconds, but the sudden contact had felt a little longer.
よし、暗示成功。成功したはず。ここまで手応えがあったの初めてだし。アリスの小言もたまには役に立つじゃない。
A very merry Aoko stood aside a very confused Sojiro. After he asked what the heck had occurred, she responded.
簡単な暗示よ。一時的に恐怖心を消しておいたから、高いところに登っても平気なはず。あの手の作業で一番足を引っ張るのは同様でしょ？恐怖も何も感じなければ、地上何メートルだろうと、平均台とそう変わらないってわけ。
He seemed to get it. It actually all sounded like Greek to Sojiro, but he accepted it as an explanation for her strange actions. He'd arrived at the summit of the track. From nearly 200 feet high, Sojiro had a bird's eye view of the entire amusement park. He was able to spot Aoko's figure right away. In the plaza not so far from here, she seemed to be occupied with something conspicuous. Aubrey, you missed nothing. They're on top of a Ferris wheel now. All I'm gonna say is there's a reason you guys watch my stream and why you enjoyed this so much. There is so much goddamn stalling, it's not even funny. Her surroundings lay still. The breadmen were still trying to figure out how to reach Sojiro by trial and error from the roller coaster's entrance. They're over 300 feet away now.
汗をかくはずだ。こんなに移動したのか。
The strong winter gales quickly dried the sweat on his brow, but he was drenched underneath his shirt. This much sweat was worth at least a half-mile run, not to mention all the scares he had experienced throughout the night.
でもよかった。あとは合図を待つだけだ。
He felt a wave of relief, but not at the thought of Aoko destroying the Snark and this nightmarish park. He was simply happy that he could repay a bit of his debt from the House of Mirrors. A blue bullet rose from the plaza where Aoko was located.
合図だ。
Sojiro stood up atop the tracks, pulled out the pouch he had stowed in his pocket, and tossed it forward. Without any regard for his questionable footing, he gave it a mighty overarm pitch. The small pouch drew a parabolic curve in Aoko's direction, quickly becoming untied in midair. Inside the bag was a lock of her hair and a small stone
高い
weight.
ところから風に乗せてくれれば、あとは何とかするから。
Aoko had said, but it was Sojiro's efforts that had set the plan in motion. The tuft of hair remained airborne, drifting as if watching over its owner. Sojiro's job was done. He remained concerned about the egg hovering over him, but there was nothing he could do about it. Sojiro breathed a sigh of relief and leaned forward to watch the rest of the plan unfold. But then,
むむ。
in a corner of his eye, he thought he spotted something familiar approaching Aoko. Please don't be a puppet, 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 please don't be a puppet.
ルートセット。ディレクト1層2層予備に3層魔力提供体現に固定循環よし射角よし術式安定大まかよし
A pattern began to carve itself into the brick street, the casting of an unprecedented incantation with unprecedented range. Keeping the rising tension contained within her chest, the fledgling mage snapped her fingers.
決めたツアープランスターマイン
She kneeled at the center of the formula and raised her head to the night sky. Not even a glimpse of the transmogrified fantasyland around her entered her vision now. Only one thing, one untouchable thing, was reflected in her blue eyes.
実はずっと気になっていたことが。
This is how their conversation started a few minutes prior. Sojiro began with a simple statement of fact. In truth, it really was the simplest of discrepancies. Any difference between the reality of an hour ago and the illusion of the present was both infinitesimal and infinite.
雲があったから勘違いしたんだろうけど。
It was hiding in plain sight. Too impossible to be real, too outlandish to be here. In this amusement park where every paradigm had shifted, something was brazenly flaunting its normalcy.
今夜は新月なんだ、青崎。
Oh, type moon.
思えば初めっからその形だったものねあんたは
The distance from the Earth to the moon was 238,900 miles, give or take. If it truly was identical to the actual moon, then this monster indeed lived up to its eerie reputation. At a distance that vast, there would have been no need to hide. It could flaunt its true form for all to see. If it had to hide its true form, that meant it was vulnerable. The monster's camouflage implied that it sat within the reach of human hands.
こっちの最大射程はよくて600ってところだけど
Ah, that's not very close to that. At this point, it was time to give it all she had. Drawing on the energy surging through the park, she extended her firing arm. A blue firework launched into the air. Oh my god, this game's taunting me for my fucking bad clue scroll. That's what I got on the clue scroll, by the way. I got a blue firework. Looking up at her hair, at least I got a collection log for it. Looking up at her hair dancing in the wind above, Aoko reached out her right hand as if to catch the night sky. A mage's own body made for the perfect catalyst. And for a female mage, the hair she had grown out over many years made for a particularly valuable and powerful source of fuel. To use it, all she had to do was apply her will. She locked the finger on both her hands together and shouted,
三層展開全術式連結起動
yeah, what she said. She hurled forth a clear challenge to bind the moon to herself. The mist began to whirl about in a vortex. The monsters high above bore its fangs at the sight of the blue spell that appeared in midair.
見抜かれたですって。
By the time Alice had noticed the change, the hostility between Alco and the Snark was palpable.
そうなら青子の勝ちよ。すぐに戻りなさい。確かに雨雲を消したのはヒントが上げすぎだけど、それぐらいは多めに見て。スナーク
The fog continued to thicken with no sign of abating. The moon that floated in the night sky could not pardon such an insolent mage. As if the Lord of the Night would bow down to such impudence, there is no staying its wrath at a challenge so flagrant.
スナーク
The robin swooped in to give its report, but Alice waved it away. Her gaze was fixed on the transforming golden moon. Her calls of restraint did not reach it. The fairy tale monster was beholden to nobody, and it would have no qualms unleashing its vast might upon its puny prey. The core of her magic bullet howled. The magic circuits within her body spun. Alco fed the magical energy, scorching her nerves with imaginary flame. She was linked to the formula inscribed on the ground. The spell was read and executed the same way as it always was, but its output was beyond reckoning. With this much firepower, even this mundane process would invite injury upon its caster. It was enough to burn up the nerves that were acting as the barrel.
でもいける
The imaginary heat had reached a terrifying temperature. Alco trembled at this endless feeling, but would have to grin and bear it lest their efforts come to naught. Alco could no longer move. When she had learned the Snark's true form from Sojiro, she gave up on any superiority a movable turret offered, instead opting to become a stationary cannon. That was the only way she could reach it. It was impossible to hunt the Snark unless she anchored her crest at this location and angle. At the same time, this action revealed that she was out of options. Once the fuse was lit, she would have no choice but to fight to the bitter end. Alco took a deep breath. This was the way she wanted it. The preparations were complete. She'd be able to deliver this maelstrom of magical energy directly to the moon like a rocket payload. The third mid-air layer served as the cannon's muzzle and sight. It would fire the magical energy once it reached criticality, and it allowed Alco to adjust the angle of fire.
きれ
The moon became warped within her scope. As Alco charged her magical energy, the ploy displayed its golden form as if to mock her. Come, worship the heavens, powerless scion of an innocent's bloodline. For there was a point among the otherworldly sky, a mystical visage obfuscated by jade mists and azure clouds. Called the greatest treasure known to the world of magecraft, a rarity more valuable than an entire kingdom. Crown Phantasm.
あれがフラットスナーク
Set apart from the first, the world's greatest fabrication.
早いまだ早い
Her instincts screamed at her to delay no further. This fairy tale monster was the greatest of its kind and was about to expose its true form. Its open hostility made it clear that it was ready to counterattack.
こっちももう動けない逃げを捨てての大栄翔先に撃たれたらそこで終わりだ
She had to shoot it down first. Magical energy was at 80%. The formula was operating normally. All that was left was to pull the trigger. But a calm voice inside her head asked if that was really okay. She had one shot at this, and there was no going back. It was a battle of precision, with no room for miscalculations. Even a tenth of a second of hesitation would tip the scales. Was she ready for the pain? Was she ready to deal with the fallout if she missed? Could she really even take down the moon with such a tiny bullet in the first place?
いい。とりあえず当たった後で考える。
Her eyes fixed upon the moon were filled with determination. She knew that the moment she fired, the intense recoil would overwhelm her entire body. Still, she shouted.
上等。出し惜しみはなし。目いっぱいぶん回すわ。
Chills. With every ounce of spirit she possessed, she fired her ultra long-range projectile into the sky. Damn, that's crazy looking. The third layer embraced the magic bullet fired from the surface of the earth. The crest and extension of Alco's self unleashed light to pierce the moon. However, an enormous blue canopy pulverized the beam. It returned the ether, that 3,000 degree flame, to nothing as it came in contact with the bullet. The recoil of the Grand Magecraft literally boiled her blood. Her body couldn't handle it. Her heart stopped. Her brain went numb from the pain and impact. Her nerves putrefied from end to end. Her magic crest revived them all by force. Even though her vision had gone white, she could still see it. Swallowing the blood in her mouth, Alco looked up with a scowl. There it was, an enormous shield of ice and a sneering, deformed skull. True, who cares? There is no time to think or hesitate. The magical energy throughout the park began to gather. Alco knelt. Across from the tyrannical face of the moon, she intuited that the ice had yet to fully form. Flat Snark still hadn't reached its full strength, which was exactly why... By accelerating the spell, Alco damaged her own body. The burden of linking the formula to the Snark caused intense pain. All she could do was grit her teeth and endure it. All because... Alco had gotten a read on their relative strengths. Even if its volume of magical energy was identical, Snark's form, its mystic scale, was in a different league. Alco could charge her enemy to her absolute limit, and that would barely make a dent in the ice wall. Meanwhile, there was nothing she could do to prevent her own annihilation if the Snark gathered as much energy as it could. She loaded her next shot. She issued orders to the floating third layer. Ignoring the toll on her body, she began to accelerate first layer formula. The role of her right hand single layer was to absorb and store surrounding magical energy. The thick fog that drifted through the park was an ancient ether spewed out by Flat Snark's own body, but Alco could pour it into her formula. Alco's body, which had integrated with the formula, took on an amount of magical energy that far surpassed its maximum capacity. It seethed in agony, or rather, it trembled in delight. For a mage, magical energy was a propellant to reach the realm of mystics, the expansion of internal time, the liquefaction of the self, the release from the physical. They were all that one might call a near-death experience. On the precipice of what lay beyond, Alco stood firm and faced reality. I said reality, right? Yeah. Still, reality had come to break her will. The gap between them was plain to any observer. The gun barrel named Alco Aozaki had not a chance to chip away at that lump of ice. She accelerated the spell further. The skull grinned. That ice was no shield, it was a hammer to crush mages who did not know their place. The moon laughed as it prepared to crush not just Alco, but the boy atop the roller coaster, as well as the park in its entirety. Her circuits were on the verge of going critical. Her body had been charged with a scorching power supply from her fingertips to her eyeballs. She would see the bullets fired. She would arrange the Magecraft formula as quickly as her nerve transmission speed would allow. A single attack was not enough. There was no way to shoot it from its flank, which meant there was only one solution. Uh-oh. The third layer began to transform. It switched from direct to alternating current. Don't tell Tesla. The spell's supposed strong point was its ability to adjust its trajectory mid-fight, but right now all she wanted was numbers. Here we go, round 2. Oh my god. Come on, come on, come on, come on, come on, come on, come on! Do it, do it, do it! Oh shit! Wait, what? A blue sun shied down upon the amusement park. Beams of light at maximum speed streaked forth to pierce the golden moon. Oh, so she's allowed to use Summit to use Common Comet, but when I use Comet, I get called a cheeser. Holding down the trigger, she continued to fire, taking energy and ad infinitum. It kind of is like Kristen, yeah. Blue flame shot forth at a critical level, but the ice would neither melt nor mar. No amount of sheer heat could ever make a dent in something formed from such a colossal amount of magical energy. The toll on her circuits sent them berserk, and blood began to run free. Push through, you can do it! The battle had become a tussle over the magical energy that's filled the park. From the very beginning, this had been the Snark's home turf. The Snark had control over at least 80% of the space, while Alco had 20 at best. The castle of ice descended as if to call the match. All she could do was delay the inevitable. She knew that she had been backed into a wall, and right now, the only thing she could do was to keep firing. Then again, perhaps not. There was another option. If she converted all of her magical energy into a defense, there was a tiny chance, no, not tiny, a great possibility in fact, that she could save just her. Clinging to that broken hope, Alco continued to rotate her circuits. Time seemed to stop at the magical energy overdose. A second of intense pain lasted an eternity. Then, amidst everything, oh dear God. Something approached one step at a time. Something from among the park's shadows. Something. 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 She felt goosebumps from head to toe. The issue was no longer the ice overhead. In the midst of this stillness, the Red Death drew closer, step by ominous step. Zabania. Her circuits in her mind began to rupture out of terror. The composition of her formula and soul began to rip apart. Then it was just behind her. Its footsteps came to a halt. It reached around and cupped her face in its blood-stained hands.
こんにちは。
Yep, don't like that. She wanted to scream out with all her might. This is it. Nothing matters. I couldn't care less. Run or don't run, it doesn't matter. Quit hiding and reveal yourself. Use whatever you can and show no mercy. That was it. She had one final card to play. Once, a miracle had been gifted to her almost as a joke and made the ice look like child's play. That was what the Red Death had come to kill. Using it would spell ruin. Not using it would mean death by ice. Then, why hesitate? There are no conditions on its use. There was no price to pay for its power. She simply would cease to be herself. That was all. Humans love to exist in areas of gray. Dozens of electrical impulses, disconnect in the brain every minute. Nothing lasts forever, not even oneself. It was not anything particularly worthy of disdain. It was not even anything remarkably worthy of being called taboo. What escaped her lips now was rage, bewilderment from the red silhouette. The girl let out an inaudible scream. Okay, Pog music. Could true magic truly be her savior? What an opportunistic load of bull. After all, to begin with, true magic. Indeed, Aoko was still in the dark when it came to that magic, whatever it was. Yo, jump out and smash it. Texas Smash or whatever, bro. She woke from her momentary hallucination, the very illusion her breaking soul had shown her. Whining had had the opposite effect on her. Her pride was now ablaze. Sojiro was right. Her opponent had put her in check, but she had done the same to it. It was clear why she was losing, so now all she needed was a counterplan well within her abilities. No matter the odds, she was not one to give up without giving it one last shot. Her numb fingers clenched into a tight fist. She was betting against the house, an unreasonable gamble that should have made her question her sanity. If her first step was off by an inch, her body would be instantly vaporized. But she knew a boy who never fled. She knew of a steadfast courage that could shine its light, no matter how small, through any desperate situation. Yes, there is more than just herself to be concerned about. If that ice fell, it would mean the destruction of the park in its entirety. Everything he had achieved, everything he had risked and dared, and happily put his life on the line for, would all be for naught. Determination and confidence surged through her like electricity. She was in no mood to be crushed by a giant sheet of ice. If she was going to lose, she'd rather do so as the grandest firework possible. Aoko was a sore loser. At this point, she would rather burn herself to cinders than let it decide her end. Oh no, she's gonna get my guy. She grunted in pain. Energy raged through her body. Her circuits were on the verge of disintegration. Inscribed upon her body, her magic crest was magecraft given physical form. It did not, however, stop with simply skin and flesh. It burrowed to the very marrow of her bones. A playful smile graced her lips. Her sense of reason had been turned upside down by the pain. That was only natural. She had to praise her own body for holding out so long while pushed beyond its limits. The skull face noticed the abnormality. What the fuck? It finally recognized the challenge for dominance over this space. It laughed at the conceited face. Never did it expect a magician to challenge the great flat snark, lord of vessels over a millennium, and in such an age of decline. She tried to catch her breath. She braced herself for the coming pain. She was going to smash that ice to pieces. Both had access to the same amount of magical energy. One of them was greatly outmatched, but
出力装置の差があった。魔力の吸引、方針の規模で負けているのなら、単純な話、私をでかくするだけでいい。
oh my god, she gonna become super Alco?
チェンジ、ツアープラン。
Oh my god, 2 barrels? The feedback would go beyond anything she had experienced to date. Quite simply, her decision went beyond recklessness. She expanded both formulae to maximum size. The first layer would transform into a giant vortex swallowing up the mist. The second layer would process it from one end and pump it into her, the barrel.
私の想定が甘かった。撃ち落とすなんて半端もいいとこ。この場合、跡形もなく打ち砕くった。
Primeval She's 17, by the way. Can you imagine if she was like 30 doing this? Primeval power answered the spellcaster's conviction. It formed the pattern of a writhing serpent. Voiceless magical power flew on a banner of revolution. Now look upon the earth, O venerable one. See now this pioneer, this first among trailblazers. What is she, Kristen Wright? She embodies a species that knows no fear, that renders nod all manner of mystic and tradition.
貸し借りはここまでよ。嘘つきブージャム。
Ah yes, you lying boojum.
お望み通り、のしをつけて返してあげる。
For the newest magician commands the principles of consumption and extinction. Ah yes, plan, make the beam bigger. An aberrant bullet of light melted through the castle of ice. The barrel held fast. Her control of magical energy was divine. 100,000 miles of veins equal to 2.5 times the circumference of the earth hungrily drank in the magical energy. The subsequent magical strike hurtled straight up at the moon. No, 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 no! Death rose from the moon's surface. A cry of indignant terror echoed through the abandoned park. Reality was burned into the eyes of this creature of fantasy. To Alco, its vain struggle was a taste of victory. Victory despite her absolute reckless use of magical energy. The energy scales had been tipped to their breaking point, but nevertheless in her favor. Black light starboard! Chills! Oh my god. Like negative energy. Shatter, 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 shatter! The skyscraper is scattered into atomized dust. The island, its unattainability extolled, had swallowed whole the despair of its many challenges. Long had it proudly eluded mankind's intellect. Yet now azure mist bemoaned its demise. In the sky the icy canopy crumbled. The snark hunting bullet jumped over the moon. Its throes of death sounded like the roaring sea reverberating across this fairy tale land. Fog. The battle was over. The thick fog dissipated and the shattered ice melted away before it hit the ground. A lethal bullet unseated the Night King from his throne, affording him no time to grieve his loss. The oil of the moon, the untouched flat snart. The dreamscape that had begun with its resurrection ended with its demise, drawing a close to the nightmare. Saving. Thanks for the hydrate, Albert. Flat on her back, Alco looked up at the night sky. She lay there perfectly still, not able to move a single finger. When she tried, her whole body screamed out in agony. She was completely empty of magical energy, and her magic crest had come to a halt. She estimated that it would likely require a whole day to recover all her bodily functions. Sadly, all she could really do in the moment was take a breath. At least her chest was swelling with pride. She had gone toe-to-toe with a fairy tale monster and had emerged victorious. Battlefield conditions had favored her, it was true, but there was not denying that Alco had come a long way in the last 6 months.
それはそれとして、アリスには謝っとかないと。プロイって壊したらそれっきりだものね。
Flat Stark would never again return to this world. It was an insanely rare item, so invaluable that it would have been impossible to price it for auction at the association in London. What the fuck, did she just fucking destroyed? Alco had sent Alice's priceless treasure to oblivion. Needless to say, things had gone more than a little out of hand. They had both agreed to the fight, so Alice probably would not complain. Even if she was furious, she would never be so undignified as to show it. The second Alco relaxed, her fatigue finally caught up with her. She did everything in her power to fight off the overwhelming drowsiness. Aside from a few minor internal injuries, her body was miraculously unscathed. She felt like she could probably stand up and dust herself off after a bit of rest. The golden moon continued to burn in the night sky. I don't like that her sentence cuts off here. Alco's bleary eyes went wide in astonishment. She was still unable to lift a finger. No, not my breadman. Uh-oh. She sighed in resignation. Alco accepted that her final stand left with her only 10 seconds before she burned to ash too. Elsewhere, just a short moment prior, buffeted by strong winds atop the roller coaster, Sojiro gravely peered down at the ground.
Mumu?
All he could muster was a single murmur. He could see Alco on top of some drawing on the ground, and in the distance, there was something familiar in the direction of the ruined House of Mirrors. Sojiro's job to throw Alco's hair from a great height was complete. While not the most impressive of tasks, it was absolutely a matter of life or death. And to top it all off, just thinking about how he was going to get back down to the ground was making him dizzy. He'd experienced more than enough trouble for one day.
Yeah, でも
He was flustered as he stood atop the swaying bridge. A skull suddenly appeared in the sky above. On the ground, he could see a circling blue light with Aoko Aozaki in the middle of it. And one more thing. From an angle that only Sojiro could see, a shadow stalked Aoko while she challenged the moon. It was shaped like a person missing the lower half of its body. The disembodied torso slowly crawled its way towards Aoko. They were still over 600 feet apart, Unfortunately for Aoko, she completely failed to notice it approaching from behind.
遠くて見えないけど、あれは
He was sure of what it was now. There was only one thing in the park that would chase Aoko and not him.
いや、
The
で
puppet.
もほら、あるいはひょっとしてただの偶然ではないだろうか。
There is no way this thing is still alive. His mind ran in circles. It was a perfectly reasonable reaction. Any grip on reality he might have had left was long lost when Aoko started firing beams of light at the monstrous moon. Aoko's merciless fire buffeted the roller coaster like a storm. Just standing on it was almost enough for him to be thrown off and killed. At any rate, Sojiro couldn't fathom the situation. Should he head back to the entrance of the roller coaster and warn Aoko about the incoming threat? No, there was no way he would make it in time. And to make matters worse, there was a hoard of bread down there waiting for him. What a fucking sentence to read. And it may very well have been the case that Aoko was already aware of the puppet and would take it out as soon as it got closer. If she was Sojiro, If she was, Sojiro was sure he would only be in the way. It did not seem like there was anything he could do to help, and beyond that, Aoko was not the only one in danger. He was in quite a predicament himself. You can't go home again. The road home was never as safe as one thought. It was as true here as it had been in the mountains. The path he was on was no exception. As risky as the ascent had been, it was even more dangerous to go back down. This was no time to be worrying about others. His shaking legs reminded him that only 200 feet separated him from death.
それは分かっているけど
Wait 1 second. Okay. His head was pounding. This was reckless and stupid. Having been raised in the mountains, he was more sensitive to danger than anyone raised in the city, and just thinking about what he was about to do made his throat seize up. Is he gonna jump? There was only one thing he could say for sure.
青崎のことだあれに絶対気づいていない
Oh my fucking god. With a sobbing shout, Sojiro started making his way down the 200-foot frame of the roller coaster. His race toward death accelerated. He never meant to speed up, but the downward slope propelled him forward.
この
It was too late for regrets. Now that he was running, he had no choice but to go even faster. And time was not on his side. He would never make it in time if he took the long way down. Never mind the breadmen crowding the exit of the roller coaster. If the exits blocked, the outcome would be the same, whether he went slowly or quickly. There was no reason to rush to his death as desperately as he did.
だから
So what if it was futile? Sojiro cleared the doubts from his mind. He turned his attention to what he could do. Keep his footing and tried to arrive at the bottom as quickly as he could.
間違えるな今大事なのは間に合うとか助けられるとかそういう結果の話じゃなくて
He had no idea what impulses were driving his stiff limbs. He just focused on the moment, pushing past the fear and the cold logic. At his core, he was the kind of person to deal with problems head on. There would be time to think about the consequences later. The hesitation was not his only obstacle. The worst possible hindrance appeared at a time when not focusing on the track would mean certain death. Sojiro sensed something wrong with the egg he had been so studiously observing out of one eye. Something had changed. At the very moment he realized it,
よそ見してる場合じゃない。
Sojiro stumbled, then instinctively caught himself. It was a miracle he had not fallen. Descending a roller coaster on foot was an act of suicide. The egg stayed right by his side, so close it was likely it would collide with him. Though he was trying to not look at it, he could not help but feel uneasy that the door-like decoration at its center was gradually opening.
ああ、もうちくしょう。なんだってこんな。
He cursed his rotten situation, and yet he refused to slow down. He ran even faster, glaring at the egg on his side.
本当、おかしい。こんな状況なのに。
Sojiro was baffled to find that he was smiling. Perhaps it had something to do with Aoko's charm. Sojiro could not tell one way or the other. He could still feel Aoko's fingers on his skin. The trust and expectation she had placed in him was etched into his heart. But what spurred him on was something entirely different. This all stemmed from a much deeper problem. There was something inside him that he could not understand at the time, but would eventually come to terms with one day.
よし、距離は今なら2メートル弱。
He carefully judged the distance as he ran down the track of death. But the distance between what? That went without saying. It was the distance between himself and the one thing that could save his life. He told himself he was going to do it over and over like a mantra. Sojiro could not believe himself. What he was about to do was incredibly stupid. But what is stupid when smart is not an option?
本当、なんでそこまでやるんだ。
Amidst it all, he laughed at how pointless such self-reflection was now. Temporary confusion, a psychological thrill ride, both had laid his soul bare. What really mattered in life? Getting real fucking deep about it now. The answer to that question was simple. His primitive values did not crave success or reward. All he wanted was to live the way he wanted. It wasn't an obligation to the people around him. His desire to live his life. His desire to live his way was his and his alone.
行こう。
If the egg had been equipped with a vocal function, it would have gasped and shocked at what happened next. The boy who had only tried to escape until this point suddenly shifted his weight. He pointed his feet outward instead of inward. On the edge of one rail, he crouched ever so slightly to maintain momentum and gazed at the floating egg.
やれる。距離的に問題はない。
He soared through the night sky. It was a flight that lasted a mere 1.5 seconds, a cordless bungee jump from 100 feet above ground. His destination. The only thing that would stop his fall, the giant flying egg. What the fuck is happening? He shrieked, this time out of elation as he desperately clung to the egg's surface. Just earlier, the cold-blooded witch had told him that without fear the top of a building would feel no different than a balance beam. This from the same witch that would have been left speechless had she witnessed this spectacle. It was one thing to be fearless and another to be reckless. What the boy did next would give her a headache in the days to come.
頼むぞ、頼む。
I'm counting on you, egg. Clinging to the egg, he shifted his gaze away from it. He felt the rapid descent. Sojiro, focusing his half-shut eyes on the ground, leaped off the egg. Once they were a few feet from the ground, they turned back to it, careful to re-establish eye contact. Something so unbelievable, though, to Sojiro. The elevator, the department store, the mysterious floating egg were both just moving objects, virtually indistinguishable from one another.
よし、割れてない。食べ物を粗末にするのは良くないと思う。
What food, brother? He landed near the plaza. The shortcut that almost cost him his life had paid off. Sojiro took off running the second his feet touched the ground. The puppet after Aoko was the only thing on his mind. He paid no mind to the moonlight in the sky, nor to the egg which was furious about being used and seconds away from self-destructing and blasting fragments all over the place. Aoko's dumbfounded expression spurred Sojiro on. The curse was complete. The empty egg began to sing its warning to let them know there was no escape. Is he dead? Shrapnel from the egg exploded through the air. The ode to Queen Alice that Alice had engraved into Dumpty quickly robbed him of his senses.
それはそれとして
He snapped back to the task at hand and ran to Aoko, still lying on the ground. His legs moved as if they had a mind of their own, though he couldn't have stopped them anyway, as he could no longer feel them.
お前驚く
Oh. The scrambled murder case. Piles of rumble became flowers of light blooming from the earth. It's like Castoria's attack. Whoa, watch where you have those hands, buddy. The final curtain drew close and the defeated left the battleground. Had Alice seen it happen, she would have been beside herself. The two had escaped by a hair's breadth. The only person in a position to witness that rare mutual destruction was the girl who had been saved from it. The boy who had never stopped running paid it no mind.
死ぬかと思った
The safety of the girl in his arms meant infinitely more to him than the miraculous way in which he saved her. Okay. Does anybody know how much more we have left here? Is it like a lot more, or is it like a little more at the end of this section? Minutes at most, okay. The moon did not wait for dawn to set. The ornamental texture of the fairy tale kingdom faded away. All the illusions returned to the way they were before, from the ostentatious chords reverberating through the streets to the puppets welcoming their guests. Peace and quiet reigned once more over Forgotten Kingdom, never to be awakened again. Out flickered the embers of a late night dream, even the electric lamps that illuminated the park. Together they watched it disappear. Sojiro laid on the ground, desperately grasping for air like a fish out of water. The curse of the exploding egg had numbed his pain, and he was understandably exhausted after all he had experienced. He looked like he could be blown away by the lightest of breezes. While Aoko was also exhausted, she was still in better shape. Focused on taking deep, even breaths, she was already working to recover her strength.
あのさ、
She addressed Sojiro indifferently as her gaze remained on the amusement park. The abruptness of it was a bit theatrical in nature. She wanted to look at him as she spoke, but her pride was simply too great.
あなた、なんかすごいことしなかった？
Pog praise. The moment she had accepted death had seemed like an eternity. She was beside herself in shock at how indifferent she had been as the shards rained down from the moon. But a reassuring voice had snapped her back into reality. Snap back to reality. Oh, there goes gravity. Why did he do it? What was he thinking? What moronic things had he done to pull it off? She had no answers for these questions, lying on the ground as she was. All she knew was that he had more than made up for his failure in the House of Mirrors and then some, in those fateful final moments. She addressed him, hoping to find answers, but found herself unable to probe any further. To dig any deeper would feel like defeat, which is why it was so unlike her to ask him in the first place. Lucky for her, Sojiro had neither the capacity nor sensitivity to understand how egocentric she was being.
すごいって、それは青崎の方だろ。
He's dying. He stuttered between labored breaths. It was taking him so much effort just to breathe that he could not address her properly. She watched him out of the corner of her eye. Thinking back on it, the boy had performed the same role each time. Each and every time he did what he could in spite of his fecklessness. It was far more admirable than her nearly suicidal tactics, even if she did defeat her opponent. He did not even recognize how extraordinary his last act of courage was.
提案。あいつをやっつけるのに協力したら、俺のことは見逃してくれる？
At the very least, he had the courage to keep trying whatever he could. A spectator might have viewed him as a supporting actor. His actions were not exactly memorable. But the lead actress he supported did not see it that way.
まあね、認めたくないし、口になってもっとしたくないけど。
Such inspired actions were wasted in a supporting role. This guy really pulled off the impossible. It was so amazing that she wanted to shout it as loud as she possibly could for all the world to hear.
青崎？
ほんと、人畜無害のどうすぎると侮れないわ。
Ordeal called to Wednesday at 5 a.m. Like next Wednesday or this Wednesday? Oh, well, I haven't finished one yet, so. All Aoko could do was sigh. How could she not? She even was forced to admit that the way he'd snatched her from the jaws of defeat was dashing.
評価、甘めだけど。
Should be told he was a lunatic for doing what he did. She studied her breathing and composed herself. While she was in bad shape, she still had her pride as a mage to consider. That was why she felt the need to maintain an air of dignity.
しずきくん、見逃すのは今日だけって話だったけど、あれ、なしでいいわ。と
Damn.
りあえず、命は助けてあげるから。
She hastily extended her right hand. It was either to shake his or to help him up. However, Sojiro did not take her hand but instead stood up on his own. This night, despite the sheer insanity that he had just experienced, his face had not once looked as incredulous as it did now.
何よ、そのリアクションは。
She stammered, worried that she had deeply embarrassed herself. Sojiro's gaze was faced upon Aoko. A problem had dawned on Aoko. Though she normally hated being stared at, this time, she did not mind. Rather, she was enjoying the warmth in his eyes and felt like it was something she could almost come to appreciate. Don't you get it? This isn't just about friendship, and I don't mean she only likes you either. Believe me when I say that Sonoji really... The conversation came running back. It was a memory better left forgotten.
いかん、それは違う。
Pushing Tobimaru's words out of her mind, Aoko turned to Sojiro.
それとこれは別だから。私はあんたのこととか、ほんとどうでもいいんだから。
Puzzled, Sojiro tilted his
さっ
head.
き嫌いだって言われたけど。
Oh my god, I love this guy so much. He responded matter-of-factly to her sudden declaration. She certainly had pointed that out, and to his face, no less. It had a mere figure of speech that he was not meant to take literally, but now was not the time to belabor the point.
そうじゃなくて、あなたが私に惚れてても期待しないでって言ってるの。
Yet belabor she did anyway. Aoko blushed slightly, realizing how insane she was being. He wondered how she'd ended up in this position, and yet she knew that she had to get this off her chest. All that was left was to politely wait for his response. I can't date you. Such heartbreakingly painful words were too much for the simple boy to hear. His shoulders slumped as if the world was coming to an end. Or, so Aoko had imagined. On the contrary, Sojiro was sitting there in deep thought. Yo, Bear, we're gonna watch this when it comes out.
俺が青崎に惚れてるって
Sojiro murmured the words as if they were a magic spell. She shot right back with the affirmative. After a moment of deep contemplation, the boy turned to the expectant girl and said, Bro, Bear is asking me, not you, little bro, relax. Why do you think that? He had to be oh my god, my voice. He had to be joking, but he was not. He was completely serious. He liked her, but he didn't like her. Of course, the vice president had jumped to conclusions. This boy had no interest in romance. He probably didn't even know what that was. Oh no. She was incredibly embarrassed by how confused Sojiro still appeared to be. Her rosy complexion spread throughout her entire body.
もう一度聞くけど、なんで
そりゃ、こっちが聞きたいわよ。飛び丸の大バカ野郎。
Just like that, she had lost her cool and given in to an unjustifiable outburst. It was time to seal off the area and destroy all the evidence. Aoko's embarrassment dissolved into sheer panic, and her grudge against Tobimaru suddenly manifested as criminal assault. She lashed out with a punch that could have taken down a bird mid-flight. More specifically, it was a brutal right hook. Aoko blinked. Her blow had connected with something solid, snapping her out of her reverie. Her temper had lashed out at the completely defenseless Sojiro. It had been a splendid blow with all of her weight behind it, knocking him out cold. Oh my god. Sojiro groaned, crumbling to the ground. Her punch finished the job that the curse had started. If not for the discomfort on his face, he appeared almost to be sleeping. Aoko convinced herself that he was napping, not concussed.
いっか。予定通りになったものね。
What do you mean always like this? The tension in her shoulder eased away as she looked down at Sojiro. A ton had gone in her way over the course of today. The day was saved for now. With nobody left to butt heads, she felt exhaustion finally overtake her.
歩いて帰れるかな、私。
Her fatigue was enough to make her complain out loud. When she thought about it, she realized that this was the first time she had used up all her magical energy and the first time she had participated in a battle of this scale without any prior preparation. When did she When did she participate in a battle of this scale with preparation? What? Though in
私
truth,
一人じゃどっちも相打ちだったっけ。
she felt somewhat proud as she whispered those words. Normally, it was something that she would beat herself up over, but instead she simply shrugged her shoulders with a bitter smile. After all, it was all thanks to the person sleeping by her side.
ね、聞こえてないわよね。
As if the night had swallowed her voice before it reached him, she received no response. Confident, she continued in an even quieter voice.
ありがとう。十分に助けてもらったわ。
Hog! Of course, there was no response from Sojiro, and she was not expecting one. Saying it for the record was enough. God damn it. Aoko watched Sojiro sleep for a while and then pulled something out of her pocket. It was the palm-sized glass bottle her roommate had given her which she opened with a pop.
それとこれとは別だから。
Leaving behind words colder than a winter chill at night, she called out his name. She barely sensed the bottle moving. As the silhouette of the fallen boy appeared to blur, she got the feeling that the weight of the bottle had increased slightly.
うわ、どうなってんだろうこれ。
What appeared to be a human form could clearly be seen inside the glass. Alice Kuanji's tools were mystics that confounded even the most knowledgeable of mages. As soon as Aoko tried to analyze them with logic or reason, she was already out of depth. Knowing this all too well, Aoko closed the bottle and watched the boy disappear as if by some magic trick. So she knocks him out and then seals him in a tiny little bottle like an ant?
まったく、こんなの手品じゃなくて魔法だって。
What the fuck? She muttered as she looked into the magical bottle. Its weight had not changed significantly, and she had no idea how it worked, but the one thing she did know was that there was a human being inside of it. Its light weight was almost unnerving, closer to empty air than a human being. It was about as heavy as one would expect if they'd bottled a summer breeze. Though, that did fit her image of Sojiro perfectly.
アリスの言う
Don't do
通
my
り
man like that. She muttered to no one in particular as she recalled the past.
ほんと、私らしくない。
Aoko wore a bittersweet smile. Her usual moodiness was gone. It was a dangerous world out there. It was good to have someone to keep on her toes. With a wry chuckle, she flicked the magical bottle with her finger and set off walking. She caught a Pokemon. She could hear a bell in the distance signaling the end of the play. An ephemeral dream gave way to reality. In the grand scheme of things, it had been but an instant. As the actors exited stage left, the last of the lights silently flickered out, and so the long-dead amusement park played its final role as a memory for a boy and a girl. Farewell, Kitsyland. Fog. Like a dog. You gotta be fucking kidding me. Oh my god. It was pretty good. I mean, the way they defeated the epic monster was like, I just powered up more, was kind of like whatever. And then I like the fight more with the mechanical thing in the house. I felt like they were interacting with it more than just like my beam laser got bigger, Pog. But yeah. And they fucking, God, they drag it on so long. Holy fuck, I feel like it could have been like half of what we read, but whatever. Oh, it was good regardless, so. 3 hours and 20 minutes, true. I'm also gonna go to bed. Okay. So I still don't know what's happening this week. So I'm gonna call the dealership tomorrow to see what's going on with my car to know what's gonna be happening. But if people want the E33 stream moved, we might move it. So I'll try to see what the plan is for the rest of the week, what people are feeling after tomorrow. So yeah, not entirely sure, but not much info I can go off of when I'm not getting answers. So I'll try to let you guys know tomorrow what's going on as soon as I can and give you guys options for what we want to do for the rest of the week. But yeah, maybe might stream tomorrow and Thursday, who knows. But yeah. All right. Thanks for hanging out, everyone. I will potentially see you tomorrow, depending on how it goes for E33. If not, we'll move stuff around and I'll see you tomorrow, most likely still anyway. But yeah, thanks for hanging out, everyone. I will catch you all in the next one. Have a good rest of your day, evening, night, wherever you're at. And I'll see you all in the next one. So thanks for hanging out, everyone. Have a good beep. And as always,